Chapter 26:47. The sweat on his forehead oozed out, and he looked very tired. Seeing this, Guaxining, who was walking next to him, glanced at Shy Yutong strangely, and then looked at Fengjiu, who was walking easily beside him. He couldn't help but wonder, why don't you let Fengjiu carry you? You're still injured. You can't stand it if you continue to carry her like this. How can I let other men carry my sister? It's not polite, Shy Yutong said. He was sweating and panting, but he didn't slow down, let alone let Fengjiu help him. In his opinion, his sister was a girl who would marry in the future. If she let other men carry her casually, it would damage her reputation. As her brother, he naturally couldn't let that happen. Hearing Shy Yutong's words, Guaxining was a little surprised. Then he smiled and didn't say anything more. He just looked at Shy Yutong with more appreciation. Fengjiu walked next to him. Listening to Shy Yutong's words, he just smiled. Walking with the Guo family's team, she found that the old man and the middle-aged man leading the way in front were very experienced. When mist appeared in some places, they would avoid the mist. When they encountered some ferocious beasts in the forest, as long as the two people in front made a gesture, the young men behind them would set up a formation and prepare to fight. Along the way, she saw that they avoided 2 poisonous mists and killed 3 groups of about 10 fierce beasts, and no one was injured or killed. They followed the Guo family's people. On the other side, a team sent by the Ruan family also entered the forest through the transmission formation to look for Xie Shirsi. However, it was not easy to find them in such a large forest. The beautiful woman who had returned to the Xie family was sitting in the yard in a daze. Her eyes were slightly swollen, and it was obvious that she had just cried. When she heard the movement outside the yard, she quickly looked over and saw her husband coming back. She quickly stepped forward and asked, "How is it? What did the Xie family say?" "The Xie family has sent a team to look for her." Xie Yin sighed, hugged her, and gently patted her on the shoulder. "Don't worry. How can I not be worried? Little Shi is just a girl. Let alone a girl, even an adult wouldn't be able to survive in that kind of place." She covered her ears and threw herself into his arms, sobbing softly, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault. You can't be blamed for this. If you want to blame someone, you have to blame the third daughter of the Ruan family. She didn't know her limits." He said in a low voice, his eyes fierce, "If anything happens to little Shi, I will definitely make her pay with her life." The beautiful woman cried for a while before suddenly stopping. She withdrew from his embrace and asked, "Where's our son, Xiao Jiu? Didn't you find the 2 of them?" "No." Xie Yin shook his head and said, "This matter is strange. The gatekeeper of the Xie family said that they didn't leave, but we couldn't find them in the Xie family residence. Even the shadow guards in the Xie family residence didn't notice their whereabouts. We don't know where they went." Hearing this, the beautiful woman was slightly startled. She thought for a moment and said with some hesitation, "Do you think the 2 of them also entered the Ruan clan's Earth Spirit formation?" Chapter 26:48. Hearing this, the beautiful woman wept again. "Xiao Shi is in danger. I don't know whether she is alive or dead. Yutong and Xiao Jiu are missing. It's all my fault. If I had known it would be like this, I wouldn't have taken them to the Ruan family. Don't blame yourself. Maybe they'll be back safely in a few days." At this point, he could only comfort her like this. On the other side, the sky in the forest gradually darkened. As the sky gradually darkened, the Guo family team also stopped. "Let's rest here tonight. Xining, you arrange for people to take turns to keep watch. Xinjia, you take a few people to pick up some branches nearby." The middle-aged man said, handing over the matter to them, and then sat cross-legged under the tree with the old man to practice. Guaxining arranged for people to keep watch, and another young man took a few people to pick up branches. When passing by Shy Yutong and the other 2, he stopped and said to Fengjiu, "Boy, you come with us." "Okay." Fengjiu responded, stood up and said to Shy Yutong and his sister, "You take a rest. I'll pick up some branches." Then he followed them. "Just pick them up around here. Don't go too far," Guaxinjia said, but he leaned against a tree to rest with his hands around his chest. Fengjiu picked up a handful of branches around and was ready to go back. However, when she was about to go back, Guixinjia, who was resting under the tree, came to her. Boy, this is not enough. Go and pick up some more. I'll take these back first. He reached out and took the branches picked up by Fengjiu and glanced at Fengjiu provocatively. What are you looking at? Go. Looking at the branches being taken away by him, Fengjiu said nothing and turned to continue to pick up branches. Seeing this, the man sneered and then winked at others, and they went back first. The branches around were picked up by others. If she wanted to pick up enough branches for tonight, she had to go a little farther. Thus, after looking back, she walked further away. In the resting place, Shai Yutong was a little worried when he saw that Fengjiu didn't come back. He looked back and wanted to find him, but he was worried about his sister. Where did Fengjiu go? Why did you come back? He said in a low voice. He couldn't sit still and started walking. Brother, why don't you go take a look? Don't go too far alone. It's dangerous. Xiashursi said. She was a little worried. But his sister's foot injury had not yet healed. How could he be at ease if he let her stay here alone? Yutong, what's wrong? After Guixinning had finished arranging matters, he walked over and saw the worried expressions on the Xie siblings' faces. He swept his gaze around and did not see any trace of the green-clothed youth. He asked, Where's Fengjiu? Big brother, the two of them called out. Shai Yutong said, I just followed them to pick up branches, but Fengjiu hasn't come back yet. I'm a little worried. Hearing this, Guixinning said, I'll ask him. He walked to the young man who was sitting under the tree and talking and laughing with several men, and asked, Xinjia, where's Fengjiu? Didn't he go to pick up branches with you? Why hasn't he come back yet? Chapter 26:49. Seeing this, Guixinning frowned slightly. He took a deep look at him, turned around, and walked back to Shai Yutong and his sister without saying anything. You don't have to worry. I'll go and have a look, he said, and walked into the forest. Seeing this, Xiashursi looked at the figure and whispered to her brother, Brother Gua is so nice. Well, he's very generous. Shai Yutong agreed. Some distance away from here, Fengjiu saw a small spring here when she was picking up branches. After washing her face, she took off her boots and soaked her feet. The cold spring water penetrated her skin, and the comfortable feeling made her squint her eyes and smile happily. When Guixinning came, he saw the cyan figure sitting on a stone with his hands slightly behind him, looking up at the sky, squinting comfortably and smiling happily. Looking at the smile on the young man's ordinary face, he couldn't help but stop and his eyes flashed slightly. He only felt that the young man seemed to be covered with a layer of light at this moment, and the comfortable and pleasant smile on his face made him unable to move his eyes away. Therefore, when the smiling young man suddenly retracted his smile and turned around to look at him, their eyes met and he was caught off guard. Looking into those clear and serene eyes, he felt as if he had fallen into an abyss and was unable to extricate himself for a long time. Fengjiu frowned imperceptibly. She glanced at Guixinning, who was standing not far away and staring at her in a daze. Then, she retracted her gaze and withdrew her feet from the cool spring water. She took out a piece of cloth from the space to dry the water stains and put on her boots. Then, she picked up the branch on the side and walked towards Guixinning. Do you need to get some water? There's a spring there. As Fengjiu spoke, she saw him staring at her in astonishment. Only then did she remember that she had just soaked her feet there. She couldn't help but smile embarrassedly. Although I soaked my feet there, the water was running and flowed down. As she spoke, she walked back and said, I'll go back first. Seeing the young man passing by him and walking back, Guixinning was stunned. It took him a long time to recover. He shook his head and laughed. After looking at the spring, he followed the young man back. Fengjiu, you're back. Why did you take so long? I thought something had happened to you. Shai Yutong saw him come back and quickly came to his side. It's okay. I just went far away when I was picking up branches and found a spring, so I washed my face and came back. She smiled and glanced at Guixinjia. When Guixinjia saw that Fengjiu had returned, he snorted and looked away, not looking at him again. Brother Guo went to find you. Did you meet him? Xiashursi looked up and asked. Hearing this, Fengjiu pursed her lips and smiled. She glanced at her and said, Yes, he should be behind me. As she spoke, She looked back and saw Guaxining walking back slowly not far away. Seeing this, Xie couldn't help laughing, and her face overflowed with a smile. Shy Yutong saw his sister like this and couldn't help but be stunned. He took a deep look at her and then looked at Fengjiu. No one knew what he was thinking. You go and sit down. I'll pile up the branches and light them when it's dark. Fengjiu said and put the branches next to the place where they were sitting. Chapter 2650. His eyes were deep, with 30% inquiry and 70% curiosity. When the Xie siblings saw him staring at Feng Nine, they couldn't help but be startled. They followed his gaze and glanced at Feng Nine. They didn't know what he was looking at. Fengjiu, who was tidying up the branches, naturally noticed it, but he didn't pay attention to it. He didn't even look back. Brother Gua, do you want to eat fruit? I have fruit here, Xie said, taking out the fruit her brother gave her and handing it to him. Guaxining came to his senses, looked away from Fengjiu, and looked at Xie with a gentle smile. No, you can keep it for yourself. He nodded to them, then left and went back to the front. Seeing this, Xie couldn't help lowering her head with a sad look. Sister, do you like Brother Gua? Shy Yutong hesitated, but still asked in a low voice. They were sitting here, and no one noticed them, so what they said didn't attract the attention of others. Hearing this, Xie looked up at her brother in a panic. No, brother. Why do you ask? Although she didn't say anything, her flickering eyes and flustered look couldn't fool Shy Yutong. He looked at Guaxining, who was wearing a black robe and talking to the middle-aged man, and said to his sister, Little sure, Brother Gua is already a cultivator at the peak of Yuanying stage. His cultivation is all achieved by himself, not with the help of elixirs, and his status in the Gua family is also very extraordinary. He didn't say it clearly, just told her where the gap between him and them was, and hoped that his sister could understand. How could a young girl's heart not be moved by a man who was so outstanding in terms of appearance, temperament, or strength? However, they were only collateral relatives in the Xie family. What's more, he didn't think there was anything special about them. As friends, it might be okay, but in terms of marriage, he felt that his sister was still not in the eyes of the Gua family. It was not that he looked down on his sister, but that all the conditions were in front of him. Fengjiu smirked as he listened from behind. This silly boy was quite insightful. It seemed that he had made some progress after suffering so much. Xie lowered her head with a sad expression and replied softly, I understand, big brother. Shy Yutong didn't say anything more. He just looked at Fengjiu and said, Let's light the fire, too. After walking for a whole day, I want to eat some meat to replenish my energy. All right, Fengjiu replied with a smile. He took out a match and lit the twigs. Then he took out the roasted meat that they had roasted today and heated it up before eating. Smelling the aroma of the meat, the people who were roasting the meat at the two bonfires couldn't help but turn around to look. They saw that it was the young man and his 3 companions who had gotten a piece of roasted meat from somewhere and were eating it. The aroma of the meat made them swallow their saliva. Where do they get the meat? Why is it so fragrant? A man asked, staring at the roasted meat that they were eating. It seems that it has been roasted and is being heated. Another man also said, staring at his own roasted meat. Why doesn't our roasted meat have the same fragrance? Did they add any seasoning? Your roasted meat is very fragrant. Can I have a taste? Chapter 2651. Here you are. Shy Yutong reacted, cut off a piece of barbecue, wrapped it in leaves, and handed it to him. Guaxining took it with a smile, thanked him, and sat down by their small fire. He didn't pick up the whole piece to bite, but took out a knife to cut off a small piece to eat. His behavior exuded elegance and nobility, which made Shy Yutong blush. Why did he look so elegant and nobility when he was eating? It seemed that he was not having a picnic in the mountains, but at the dinner table at home. His every move was noble, which made Shy Yutong feel a little ashamed. Shy Yutong was also from the Xie family. Although he was a collateral relative, his family was not bad. Compared with him, it was really obvious who was better. It's very fragrant, Guaxining said with a smile. It's rare to eat such delicious food outside. This is barbecued by Fengjiu. He is really good at barbecuing, Xia Yutong said, looking at Fengjiu, who was eating barbecued meat. Hearing this, Guoxining looked at the young man who was sitting and eating barbecued meat in surprise. Seeing that he was eating by himself and didn't even look at him, Guoxining thought of something and said, Fengjiu, your barbecued meat is very fragrant. Did you add spices? Inexplicably, he wanted to talk to the young man. Fengjiu glanced at him, chewing barbecued meat in his mouth, and answered vaguely, yes. Seeing this, Guoxining's eyes moved slightly. He looked at the young man's bulging cheeks moving as he chewed, like a cute little squirrel, which made him feel a little strange. How could a young man make him feel cute? Obviously, the young man's appearance was not outstanding, but he attracted his attention. Being stared at like this, Fengjiu couldn't eat even if he had a good appetite. She ate the barbecued meat in her hand quickly, wiped her mouth, and stood up. I'm done. Take your time. Seeing that she turned around and was about to leave, Xia Yutong quickly asked, Where are you going? Don't run around at night. I'm not running around. I'm going to rest in the tree. She pointed at the big tree behind them. As soon as she finished speaking, she leaped onto the tree. Guoxining watched his figure lightly jump up the tree and find a place to rest. He couldn't help but smile. He looks very free and easy. Free and easy? Xia Yutong was stunned and then laughed. How is he free and easy? I think he's just heartless. He doesn't even worry about danger. Xia Shirsi noticed that Guoxining's attention was on Fengjiu. She couldn't help but lower her head to look at herself. She didn't look bad either. But why didn't Brother Guo's eyes fall on her? Why hadn't he paid any attention to her? Guoxinjia, who had overheard their conversation, came forward after learning that the barbecue they were eating was made by Fengjiu. He stood under the tree and raised his head to look at the sleeping youth. Fengjiu, since you know how to barbecue, come down and help us barbecue some. Hearing this, Xia Yutong just frowned slightly, but didn't speak. They went with them and were protected by them. If they wanted to help them barbecue, he really didn't know how to refuse. Guoxining stood up and said, I think the barbecue is almost ready. Why do we need his help? Chapter 2652. Hearing the man's words, Fengjiu jumped down from the tree and took out a small bottle. This is seasoning. Just sprinkle it on the meat. As he spoke, he handed the bottle of seasoning to Fengjiu, but Fengjiu did not take it. Since you have nothing to do, since you know how to roast, come and help us roast it, so that we don't sprinkle too much or too little, and the taste won't be good. As Guoxinjia spoke, his gaze fell on Fengjiu, as if he knew that Fengjiu would not dare to refuse. Seeing that Fengjiu did not move and only looked at him, Guoxinjia laughed. What? Do you think I can't ask for your help? Although he was laughing, there was no smile in his eyes. On the contrary, the contempt and provocation between his brows were clear. Hearing this, Fengjiu revealed a simple and honest smile. No, it's just that I'm a little worried. Worried about what? Guoxinjia asked. I'm worried that if you guys eat the food I roast, if something happens, it will be my fault. I really don't want to do such a thankless task, she said with a troubled expression. Hearing this, Guoxinjia laughed. Do you think all of us don't have eyes? Do you think we'll have the chance to let you do anything? So, if anything happens, it has nothing to do with me? She smiled and asked. Nonsense, what can happen? When it's done, you can cut off a piece and eat it. I don't believe that you'll dare to do anything. He snorted lightly, indicating for Fengjiu to follow him. Fengjiu smiled and swept her gaze across the surroundings. When she saw that everyone's gazes had landed on her, it was obvious that they had heard their words. Hence, she did not say anything else and followed Guoxinjia to the side of the fire where the barbecued meat was being roasted. Guoxining also walked over and came to Fengjiu's side. Seeing that he took out the bottle, Guoxining handed it to him. He was startled and asked, What are you doing? Checking it. This is a normal seasoning. Get someone to check it, in case they say that I put some random things in you guys. Hearing this, Guoxining wanted to tell him that there was no need. However, seeing that everyone's eyes were on him, he took it to the middle-aged man in front of him. Not long after, he returned. Uncle's son has checked it, It is indeed a seasoning to add the fragrance of the meat." As he spoke, he handed the bottle back to Fengjiu. Thus, Fengjiu took a small knife from the side and cut a small cut on the roast meat and sprinkled the seasoning. The surrounding people sat and chatted as they watched him roast the meat. When the rich aroma of meat wafted through the air, everyone couldn't help but swallow their saliva as they looked at the barbecued meat on the rack. The golden, crispy skin exuded a strong, meaty aroma. That smell really made people salivate. Their gazes shifted away from the ordinary-looking young man. They didn't know that this young man had such skills. The two to eat. Fengjiu put away the rest of the seasoning. At the same time, he took a small knife and cut a small piece of meat. "I'll eat this," knowing that they would be worried if she did not eat it. She cut the meat into smaller pieces and ate it. After the others saw that Fengjiu ate the roast meat, they also took a knife and cut some roast meat. They first gave some to the old man and the middle-aged man before distributing the rest. Chapter 2653. Seeing him coming back, Shai Yutong moved his lips and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, it's all our fault. If it weren't for us, you wouldn't have to barbecue for them." He lowered his head. Along the way, he faintly guessed that Fengjiu's strength was above him, but he didn't know how powerful it was. But he knew that Fengjiu would not agree to barbecue for them at ordinary times. It was because of them that he bowed his head. Hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly stunned, and then said with a smile, "It doesn't matter. Anyway, I have nothing to do." She smiled, sat down by the fire, and said to him, "You need to change the medicine on your wounds. Come on, let me help you." "Oh." Shai Yutong didn't say anything more. He just took off his coat obediently, revealing the wounds tied inside. "What should I do? There's only one bottle of medicine left." Xie frowned, worried that the wounds would not be healed after the medicine was used up. "I have some here. Put away your bottle first," Fengjiu said. After untying the bandage on Shai Yutong's wound, she checked the wound and took out a bottle from the space to apply it to him. When she saw that the more serious wound was festering because of sweat and the hot weather, she frowned slightly. "The wound is festering. It needs to be treated again." "It's okay. Just put some medicine on it." He also knew that there was no condition here, so he could only bandage it simply. Fengjiu glanced at him, then took out a knife and said, "I'll help you remove the rotten flesh." While speaking, she burned the knife on the fire. Hearing his words, Xie and Xie's faces changed slightly. "Remove? You, how can you do that?" He didn't know medicine. How could she use a knife to remove his flesh? How dare he? Looking at the sharp knife in Fengjiu's hand, Shai Yutong's face turned pale, and the sweat on his forehead oozed out. No, I think we'd better go back and deal with it. It should be nothing." Before he finished, he was interrupted. "When we go back, your arm will be broken," Fengjiu said lightly and glanced at him. "Are you afraid of pain? You don't dare to let me remove it?" Shai Yutong swallowed and said, "It's not about being afraid of pain, okay? You don't even understand." His voice paused, and he held his breath. His body stiffened because the person holding the knife didn't wait for him to finish speaking and had already used the knife to cut his wound. Seeing this, his heart tightened and his entire body tensed up. He couldn't say a word. "Relax. Don't be nervous. Practice makes perfect. I'll just practice on you more," Fengjiu said casually as he removed the festering flesh from his wound. Shai Yutong stared at him. What did he mean by practice makes perfect, so he had to practice with him more? How could this person be so heartless? His body was tense, but his eyes did not dare to move to the wound. He only stared at the person in front of him. After Fengjiu removed the festering flesh from his wound, she cleaned it up before applying her ointment and bandaging the wound. "All right." She went to the side to wash her hands, then came back and said, "I'll go to sleep first. Call me if you need anything." As soon as she finished speaking, she jumped to the tree to rest. Chapter 2654. At this moment, there was a sudden puff not far away. As soon as the sound came out, the people around suddenly became quiet and looked at Guixinjia, who suddenly stood up with a slightly changed face. Puff! Another sound came out, accompanied by a foul smell, which made the people around suddenly retreat with a look of disgust. Shinjia, what's the matter with you? You even farted in front of so many people. It stinks. A young man, who was usually not very friendly with Guashinjia, pinched his nose and fanned himself, looking at him with a look of disgust. The others retreated slightly and held their breaths, but they didn't want to go overboard. They didn't reprimand him like that person. They just stared at him with a pair of surprised eyes. Guashinjia blushed and clamped his hips tightly with his legs, but he didn't know what was wrong with him. There was another fart sound. This time, the people around stood up and retreated a few meters away. Seeing this, Guashinjia glared at them angrily and said, "Everyone farts. What's there to dislike?" While speaking, he only felt a rumbling sound from his stomach, and a sharp pain came from his stomach, which made him sweat on his forehead. "Hiss, I can have a stomachache." As he said this, he covered his hips and ran to the dark part of the woods without caring about his image. Seeing this scene, the crowd was stunned for a moment, and then burst into laughter. "Ah ha ha ha! I think he ate too much barbecue. You didn't see that he picked the fat and tender piece to eat there. It's good to eat in moderation. It's definitely not good to eat too much. Look, no one else will have a stomachache, but he did." Another person shook his head and laughed, chatting with the person next to him. Seeing this scene, Guashining's eyes flashed. He instinctively looked back to find the blue figure, but he didn't see him. Finally, he looked up at the tree and saw that the boy had fallen asleep on the tree. Was it a coincidence? Xia Yutong looked at the scene and was slightly stunned. He looked up at the figure on the tree and couldn't help but ask secretly, was it a coincidence? Xia Shirsi covered her mouth and laughed. Her eyes were full of joy. "Brother, that person is so embarrassing. He actually did such an indecent thing in front of so many people. It's so fun." Xia Yutong came to his senses and grinned. He must have eaten something bad. He can't smile when he comes back, so as not to offend people. Yes, I know." Xia Shirsi nodded with a smile. What was surprising was that Guashinjia actually ran back and forth no less than 7 times, pulling himself until he collapsed on the ground. As the night deepened, other than the night watchers, the others gradually fell asleep. It wasn't until the second half of the night that the rustling sound made Feng Jiu open her eyes. She turned her head slightly and looked around. About 50 meters away, pairs of eyes were staring at them with a strange cold light in the night. It was a wolf. Moreover, it was a large pack of wolves. There were no less than 100 pairs of eyes flickering in the darkness. From the looks of it, there were at least 100 wolves. Moreover, they were not ordinary wolves, but rather wolf beasts of a certain level. Chapter 2655. Alert! There's a pack of wolves. The night watchman exclaimed at this time, and the 8 people guarding around quickly retreated. After hearing the exclamation, the sleeping people quickly turned over and jumped up, pulling out the swords at their waists, ready to fight at any time. Just in an instant, the surrounding atmosphere became dignified, and there was a depressing atmosphere in the air. Feng Jiu jumped down as soon as they shouted and stood beside Xie Yutong and Xie Yutong. "Feng Jiu, there's a pack of wolves." Xia Yutong said nervously. "Well, I know. Carry your sister on your back and follow me. Don't go far." She lowered her voice and said, "Okay." Hearing Feng Jiu's words, Xia Yutong gradually calmed down. He quickly carried his sister on his back and stood beside Feng Jiu. The Guo family members gradually formed a formation. Their backs were facing the inside while they faced the outside. The tips of their swords were pointed outwards as they stared at their surroundings. As they sensed the movements of the wolves that had been lying in ambush began to inch closer. Worried about Feng Jiu and the other 2, Guaxining came to them and said, "It's wolf beasts. You have to be careful. Try to stand in the middle and don't get out of our protective circle." As soon as his voice fell, he glanced at Feng Jiu. "Okay, we know," Xia Yutong responded. Seeing Guaxining looking at Feng Jiu, he couldn't help but look at Feng Jiu, wondering why Guaxining paid so much attention to Feng Jiu. After giving his instructions, Guaxining left first and returned to the old man and the middle-aged man's side. When they saw the pack of wolves, Even though everyone was mentally prepared, they could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. There are hundreds of them, right? A Gua family disciple's voice couldn't help trembling. This, not only are there hundreds of wolves, but half of them are at the level of holy beasts. Another person gasped and felt the crisis in front of him. There were only a team of 30 or 40 people. How could they fight against hundreds of wolf beasts? Moreover, the level of these wolf beasts was not low. They were afraid that they couldn't help but look at the old man and the middle-aged man. In such a situation, they were not confident that they could win. Suddenly, a wolf's howl resounded through the night sky. The howl reverberated in the night, and no one could tell where it came from. However, one thing was certain. It was the Wolf King that had let out the howl. As soon as the wolf howled, the surrounding wolves that were eyeing them covetously let out a low howl. One by one, they pounced forward, baring their fangs as they pounced on the prey in their eyes. The speed of the wolf beasts was extremely fast. As they pounced forward, they raised their claws and fangs at the Gua family members. Coupled with the fact that there were so many of them, the Gua family members were unable to cope with them. Gradually, their formation was broken and chaotic. Hiss, swish, roars, low cries, and the sharp sound of air currents accompanied by the slashing of swords and sabers spread out in the night. Between the flashes of the sabers and the shadows of the swords, blood splattered, and the smell of blood also permeated the air. Don't panic. Stay calm. Hold the formation, the middle-aged man yelled. However, he only saw that everyone was fighting chaotically because of the wolves' attacks. Their formation had long been scattered, and because of this, most of them were scratched by the wolves' claws because they couldn't cope with the wolves' attacks. Chapter 2656. The old man said to the middle-aged man. At the same time, he said to Guaxining, I'll leave it to you. Hold on. When we defeat the Wolf King, the wolves will retreat. Guaxining waved his sword to kill a wolf beast and replied, Okay, elder and uncle son, be careful. As soon as his voice fell, the two of them rose up and went to find the Wolf King. There were not many of them, plus the large number of wolves. They would be defeated after a long battle. The only way to make the wolves retreat was to defeat the Wolf King. But he looked at the blood-stained disciples around him. The fierce attack of the wolf beasts made them lose their usual calmness and become a little crazy and flustered. He could not help but worriedly look for the Xie siblings and Fengjiu in the crowd. Seeing that the three of them had been forced to a corner, he wanted to go over, but he could not get past the crowd to reach them. He could only fight as he walked toward them. Xie Shirsi had never seen so many wolf beasts appear at once, especially when those wolf beasts were baring their sharp teeth and drooling as they pounced on them. Their ferocious and bloodthirsty appearance made her tremble uncontrollably. She clung tightly to her brother's back, not daring to look again. Shai Yutong was still holding a sword in one hand to kill the wolf beasts that rushed up. He obeyed Fengjiu's words and used the big tree behind him as a cover so that there was no worry behind him. He just focused on dealing with the wolf beasts in front of him. However, after all, he was carrying his sister on his back and had to fight with one hand. His physical strength was very limited. After a while, his physical strength gradually couldn't keep up, and the speed of attack and defense naturally slowed down. Seeing a fierce beast rushing over, he was so scared that his face turned pale. But this time, he saw Fengjiu's sword piercing through the wolf beast's body and throwing it out. Looking at the person in front of him, his heart beat fast, and he gasped for breath. He thought he was going to die. Lean against the tree and rest behind me, Fengjiu said without turning his head. He stood in front of them to protect them from danger. These wolf beasts were child's play to her. However, she did not have any intention of helping the Gua family out of their predicament. Firstly, their battle prowess was not weak, and they would probably only sustain some injuries after this battle. Secondly, with her current status, if she really did something, it would naturally attract unwanted attention and cause unnecessary trouble. Secondly, with her current status, If she really did something, it would naturally attract unwanted attention and cause unnecessary trouble. Therefore, it was better to fight. Anyway, she only needed to protect the Sies siblings. As for the others, what did it have to do with her whether they lived or died? With a sweep of her gaze, she glanced at Guashinjia, whose legs were weak, and the corners of her mouth curled into a smile that was not a smile. Guashinjia had pooped all night. Now his physical strength had not recovered, and he encountered a pack of wolves. Looking at his bloody wounds, she knew that he was seriously injured. If it weren't for the help of several people around him, he would have been torn apart by the wolves. After fighting for a long time, the Gua family was almost unable to hold on. Even Guaxining was scratched by the wolf claws. At this time, there was a hasty howl in the night. After hearing the howl, the wolves howled. Although they were unwilling, they finally retreated quickly. Seeing those people and wolf beasts retreating, the Gua family's legs were weak, and they fell to the ground. Chapter 26:57. In the night, a young man in cyan stood in front of the Sies siblings, holding an inconspicuous long sword in his hand. There was no trace of fear on his face. Behind him, Shai Yutong carried his sister on his back, and there was a trace of panic between his eyebrows. Neither the young man in cyan nor the Sies siblings had any wounds on their bodies. There were only a few bloodstains on their clothes. Looking at the three of them, he was stunned for a moment. He instinctively looked at the surrounding Gua family disciples and saw that not a single one of them was unharmed. Every single one of them was injured to varying degrees. There were even some who were on the verge of death. The strength of those people was far greater than the three of them. Were they not injured because they protected them? As soon as this idea came to him, even he himself wanted to laugh. Not to mention that the Gua family members were injured. Even if they were not injured, as soon as the formation was dispersed and the wolves rushed up, he did not think that the Gua family members would risk their lives to protect them. It's good that they are not injured. After a long time, he just said this sentence and turned to leave to see other injured people. Perhaps because of Guaxining's eyes and the shock in his eyes, Shai Yutong thought of something. He glanced at the three of them and found that they were indeed not injured. And they were not injured because Fengjiu had been protecting them. Fengjiu, because of Fengjiu again. He looked at the thin figure standing in front of him. Obviously, the figure was not as big as him, but he had been standing in front of him to resolve the danger for them. This time, if it weren't for him, how could they be intact under the attack of the wolves? Brother, put me down. Go and see if they need help. Help them dress their wounds. Xiashirsi only felt that the atmosphere was a little strange, but she did not think much about it. She just whispered to break this strangeness of the moment. Okay. Shai Yutong said, put her down, and said to Fengjiu, you and Xiaoshi rest here. I'll go and see if they need help. Fengjiu nodded and sat down beside Xiashirsi. He took out a piece of cloth and wiped his sword before putting it away. He closed his eyes and leaned against the wall, as if he had turned a blind eye to the cries and wails around him. Xiashirsi looked at the badly mangled wounds on their bodies. Some of them had blood staining their clothes, and some of them had their arms torn open by the wolf claws. The wounds were so deep that the bones could be seen. She couldn't help but shrink back in fear. Xiaojiu, aren't you afraid? Xiashirsi asked softly. Fengjiu opened his eyes and glanced at her. Don't be afraid. Her voice paused, and her gaze fell on the injured and screaming people in front of her. Her voice rang out again, because I have the ability to protect myself. Xiashirsi looked at him in a daze and said, Xiaojiu, you're amazing. Yes, I'm very powerful. She tilted her head slightly and looked at her, revealing a smile as she spoke. In front of them, Shai Yutong was helping others dress their wounds. Looking at those wounds, his heart was also throbbing. If such injuries had happened at home before, he would have cried and shouted for his father and mother. But when he came here, he realized that these were necessary for people who were out for experience. I'll help you stop the bleeding first. Is there any medicine? Bandage this wound. Shai Yutong's voice came from the crowd. Chapter 26:58. Your brother is actually a good person, she said, which was rare of her. When Xie heard this, she smiled. Yes, yes, my brother is a good person. He treats me very well too. When I was young, he would fight with people who bullied me. Where we used to live, the people in town called him the little bully. Fengjiu smiled and said to her, "Take off the medicine on your leg. I'll take a look." Xie was slightly startled. "Now? Actually, my leg is only sprained. I think it should be better by tomorrow." "Yes, since your brother isn't here, I'll take a look. I don't want him to accuse me of taking advantage of you when he comes back," Fengjiu said with a smile. Hearing this, Xie smiled and said, "You won't take advantage of me." As she spoke, she took off her boots and untied the bandage on her leg. It had been wrapped for an entire day, so the skin where the medicine was wrapped was slightly wrinkled. Fengjiu touched her leg with his hand and heard Xie gasp slightly. "TSK, it still hurts when you move." Hearing this, she put her hand on it and looked at Xie. She asked, "Are you afraid of encountering these things on this trip?" "Yes, but with you by our side, I don't feel so afraid," Xie said honestly. She looked at Fengjiu and said, "When I fell in here, I was very afraid, but when you and my brother came, I wasn't afraid anymore. But when I saw the wolf pack just now, I was also very scared. I've never seen so many wolf beasts before. Those people were so powerful, and they were all injured. I thought we were dead for sure." While talking to her, Fengjiu's hand on Xie ankle turned slightly. In the darkness of the night, no one saw that her palm was releasing a faint green light, which was slowly seeping into Xie ankle. "All right, this leg can't be wrapped with medicine all the time. Let it breathe," Fengjiu said, motioning for her to put on her boots. He took out some water to wash his hands. On the other side, the old man and the middle-aged man returned. Both of them were injured, especially the old man. His face was a little pale, and his gray robe was stained with blood. Guoxining went up and helped the old man to sit down. Looking at the injured Guo family disciples, the old man coughed and asked, "How are the casualties?" "Great Elder, don't worry. No one died. Only a few of them were seriously injured. The rest of them are more or less injured," Guoxining said. Hearing this, the first elder, who had just sat down, stood up again. "I'll go take a look." "Great Elder, you are also injured. Sit down and rest," the middle-aged man said, supporting him and not letting him get up. Only now did Guoxining notice that Great Elder's shoulder was bleeding, but his clothes were not torn. Startled, he asked, "Is Great Elder's injury serious? I was afraid that you would be worried, so I simply bandaged my wounds and changed my clothes before coming back." The middle-aged man looked at the pale first elder and sighed. Hearing this, Guoxining's heart sank. If that was the case, then his injuries were probably very serious. "All right, I'm fine. I'll be fine after a short rest," the old man said and gestured. "Go check on the others. I don't need you here." Seeing this, although Guoxining was worried, he still replied, "Yes." Only then did he turn around to look at the others. Chapter 2659. In the darkness of the night, no one knew that several ferocious beasts that had come for the smell of blood had been silently repelled by Fengjiu. With the Guo family as the center, an ancient pressure faintly spread out in the air, intimidating those ferocious beasts that had been eyeing them covetously, making them not dare to take even half a step closer. At this time, the old man and the middle-aged man of the Guo family were looking around worriedly. "The smell of blood here is too strong. I'm afraid it will attract the ferocious beasts again. Now our people are injured like this and can't bear a second attack. First Elder and Uncle's son, don't worry. I have arranged for people with lighter injuries to guard around," Guoxining said, glancing at the people around him. Suddenly, he saw a cyan figure coming out of the dark and sitting back under the tree. "You have to be careful," the old man said in a weak voice. "If it weren't for the crisis at night and our people being exhausted, we really couldn't stay here any longer. I'll take 2 more people to patrol around," Guoxining said, saluting and turning away. Shai Yutong saw that Guoxining was about to take 2 people to patrol around, so he stepped forward and said, "Brother Guo, your injury hasn't been treated yet. If the wound is not treated, it will be inflamed. Hearing this, Guaxining looked at his injury and showed a gentle smile. It doesn't matter. It's just a small injury. Small injuries also need to be treated, Shai Yutong said, turning around to ask the person around him for the medicine. Unexpectedly, the person said, "The medicine has been used up, and there are still several people who don't have medicine. There are too many people injured this time, and the medicine brought is not enough." Hearing this, Shai Yutong was stunned. He glanced at them and saw Guaxining smile. Then he took him to Fengjiu under the tree. "Fengjiu still has half a bottle of medicine. I'll ask him to bandage you." Guaxining was pulled to Fengjiu under the tree. Looking at the young man in cyan, sitting with his eyes closed, Guaxining's eyes flashed slightly, but he didn't speak. "Xiaojiu." Shai Yutong showed a flattering smile and called him Xiaojiu instead of Fengjiu. Seeing Fengjiu open his eyes, he hurriedly said, "Well, they have used up all the medicine for wounds. I remember you still have half a bottle of medicine for wounds. Use that medicine to bandage Brother Gua's wound." Seeing this, Fengjiu took out the half-filled bottle of medicine and gestured, "Sit down." Guaxining sat down and took off his jacket, revealing the wound on his chest and the wound on his arm. He tilted his head slightly and looked at Fengjiu. He saw that his expression was indifferent. After cleaning the wound, he took out some medicine and simply bandaged the wound. "That's enough." Fengjiu stood up and said, "Are you going to patrol the night?" "I'll go." With that, she walked into the darkness alone. "Hey, Xiaojiu." Shai Yutong wanted to stop him, but he had already gone to the dark. "Don't worry, I'll go with him," Guaxining said, turning back to tell the other two men, and then walked to the dark. Feng Nine walked around, holding a branch that she had picked up from somewhere. She fiddled with the weeds from time to time. Her pace was neither fast nor slow. Rather than saying that she was patrolling, it was better to say that she was taking a walk. Hearing the movement behind her, she looked back and saw Guaxining. She asked, "Why are you here, Child Gua?" Chapter 2660. Guaxining came to Fengjiu's side and tilted his head slightly to look at this youth who was half a head shorter than him. "I'm only a servant in the CFU. Naturally, I cannot break the rules. But from what I see, you don't look like a servant at all. In fact, you look more like a master than Yutong." He stared at him as though he wanted to see something from his face. Fengjiu laughed lightly. "That is because he is casual and does not have the airs of a master." "Is that so?" It was clear that he did not believe it. The two did not speak and slowly walked around, observing the movements in the surroundings. After a long time, Guaxining broke the silence. "Why were you not injured when you faced the wolf pack?" He had wanted to ask this question when he saw that they did not have any wounds. He had held it in until now and finally asked. Hearing this, Fengjiu tilted his head slightly to look at him, his face filled with shock. "Young Master Guo wants us to be injured?" Guaxining did not expect to hear him ask this. He looked deeply at Fengjiu and shook his head. "No, I just have some doubts." "What is there to be puzzled about?" "It is because you were protecting us that we were not injured." She said it matter-of-factly, as though it was the truth. If Guaxining had not seen the scene at the time and knew that the Guo family would not have been able to protect them in that kind of situation, he would have really believed his words. Not being able to get anything out of him, he did not ask further and just silently patrolled the night. However, as the night deepened and the surroundings became quieter, he could not help but stop walking and look into the darkness of the forest. "What is it?" Fengjiu also stopped walking and asked. "It is very strange," Guaxining said. Fengjiu's eyes moved slightly and asked, "What is strange?" "The blood of the wolf pack, the blood of the Guo clan's injured disciples, has permeated this place for a long time without dissipating. The smell of blood is so heavy, yet there are no ferocious beasts around. This doesn't make sense." Guaxining pondered. He couldn't think of a reason why the night had become so peaceful. Anyone with a little bit of experience in the outside world would know that in a forest full of dangerous, ferocious beasts, especially at night, the smell of blood would cause the ferocious beasts to become restless. However, Other than the wolf pack that had fought with them earlier, the smell of blood did not attract any other ferocious beasts. This was somewhat illogical because he originally thought that tonight would definitely be a bitter battle, but he didn't expect it to be so peaceful. Fengjiu chuckled. Do you always overthink things? Isn't it a good thing that there are no more ferocious beasts? Her ancient pressure was emitted outwards, and Guixining's strength wasn't too strong, so he naturally couldn't sense the existence of her ancient pressure. That's right. How long will it take to get out of here? She even left some pills in the Baolu. She said that she would get the items to exchange after 7 days. If they were trapped here, they would probably miss it. There is a transportation array set up by our clan here. As long as we reach it, we will be able to leave the forest of 1,000 poisons. Guixing said, his brows slightly furrowed. However, everyone is injured now, and I can see that the Great Elder's injuries are not light. I'm afraid that we will encounter many ferocious beasts along the way. If we want to climb over that mountain to reach the transportation array, it will probably take some time. Chapter 2661. If there was no teleportation formation, they wouldn't have been teleported here from the Ruan clan's teleportation formation. However, where was the Ruan clan's teleportation formation? Could it be at the place where they were teleported out? Thinking of this, she shook her head inwardly. That shouldn't be possible. There shouldn't be any formation at that place. Or rather, when she heard Xieshursi's exclamation, she didn't go there to check. Perhaps the Ruan clan's formation was hidden there. However, now that they had traveled so far, they naturally couldn't go back there to look for the formation, which they didn't know if it existed. She sighed in her heart. It seemed that she could only leave with the Gua clan. That night, although it was not very peaceful, the latter half of the night was very peaceful. Although those who were injured did not dare to sleep too deeply, in the end, they could not resist the tiredness that came over them and fell into a deep sleep. When they woke up, they found that the morning sun had already shone on the forest. The night had passed, and a new day welcomed them. It's daybreak. No ferocious beasts attacked us last night. That's great. Cheers rang out from everyone's mouths. Naturally, they didn't know that they were able to sleep peacefully without being attacked by fierce beasts because someone had blocked the danger for them. It was because someone had protected them that they were able to safely pass through the night. The middle-aged man stood up and coughed deeply. He looked at everyone and said, "Let's set off." Yes. Everyone responded with a big grin on their faces. When the Xie siblings saw Fengjiu walk back, they asked, "Xiaojiu, are you tired?" Fengjiu shook his head. "No, there's a fruit here. Eat it." Xieshursi took out a fruit and handed it to him. Fengjiu smiled. "No need. I have some." She fished out 3 fruits from her sleeve and handed one to each of them. "Have a taste." As soon as she finished speaking, she took a bite of the fruit. The Xie siblings looked at the bright red fruit and couldn't help but be surprised. They took a bite, but once it entered their mouths, they felt different. This was a spirit fruit. The fruit was fresh, sweet, and juicy. With just one bite, they could feel their dry throats being moistened by the juice. A trace of spiritual energy spread through their bodies, making them feel full of energy. After eating the fruits, they continued on their journey with the Gua family. Along the way, they occasionally encountered ferocious beasts, but they didn't appear in groups, so the Gua family didn't have much trouble dealing with them. However, at noon, a cry of surprise came from the front of the group. "Great Elder! Great Elder!" Those who were walking at the back looked to the front and saw that the old man in front seemed to have fainted. Everyone surrounded him in panic and called out, "What's wrong with the Grand Elder? Why did you suddenly faint? Great Elder's face is so pale. He's breaking out in cold sweat." Hearing the crowd's words, Fengjiu and the others also walked forward. However, they were all surrounded by the Gua family members and could not squeeze their way forward. They could only vaguely see the old man fainted and Guixing taking off his outer robe. Maybe the injuries on his body have worsened, the middle-aged man said with worry in his eyes. Chapter 2662. The white cloth wrapped around the wound was oozing with blood. It had a yellowish-white color, and there was a faint stench coming from it. When Guaxining took off the cloth covering the wound and saw the red, swollen, inflamed, and festering wound, he couldn't help gasping. How can this wound be so serious? Everyone's expression changed when they saw the bone-deep wound on the old man's shoulder. It was a wound caused by the Wolf King. The deep claw marks were a ghastly sight, especially when the wound was worsening. It was even more frightening. I didn't expect the wound to become like this overnight. The middle-aged man looked dignified. Guaxining looked at the middle-aged man and asked, "Uncle Son, can't you do anything about it?" His medical skills were one of the best in the clan. In addition to his fighting ability, medical skills were also a major factor in this team. "The situation is not very good," the middle-aged man said. "The wound has become like this in just one night. Other than the fire poison in the body, the wound still needs to be disinfected. It's just that we didn't bring enough medicine this time. We don't have any more anti-inflammatory medicine or medicine to treat the wound. First Elder, I'm afraid you can't hold on until we get to the transmission formation," Guaxining said, and fell silent for a while. "Well, will it be better to remove the festering flesh?" The sudden voice made everyone stunned. They turned around and looked at Shai Yutong with displeasure and contempt. "It's easy for you to say. That's meat. How can you do it casually?" Shai Yutong touched his nose embarrassedly and just said, "My original wound was also a little inflamed and festered. Fengjiu cured it for me." I thought. Before he finished speaking, he saw everyone looking at him again. He waved his hand quickly. "Forget it. If you think this method is not good, just listen to it. Don't take it seriously." Fengjiu glanced at him speechlessly. Was this guy's brain kicked by the furnace again? Why did he always get into trouble? Sure enough, as soon as he finished speaking, Guaxining looked over. "Fengjiu, do you know medicine?" Fengjiu paused and looked at him. "I know a thing or two." Hearing this, the people who originally had hope in their hearts couldn't help but be disappointed again. How could a brat like him know anything about medicine? Even Uncle Sun said that the situation is not good. What can he do? That's right. This brat has been hiding in the back all this time. Sometimes he doesn't even make a sound. If he doesn't speak, I treat him as if he's invisible. How could he know anything about medicine? Hearing their words, Fengjiu smiled. His eyes narrowed slightly as his gaze swept across everyone's faces. Then, he said leisurely, "Although I only know a little, it's more than enough to treat this kind of injury." Hearing this, Guaxining's eyes lit up. "Really? Of course." She stood there without moving and simply responded, "TSK, this grandson is quite arrogant." "That's right. Aren't you afraid of blowing your own trumpet?" Fengjiu looked at them with a smile. "How about this? I'll treat your grand elder. If he's really cured." She paused and looked at them with narrowed eyes. "How about it? How much does it cost?" The Guo family's disciples looked at her with contempt in their eyes. Fengjiu smiled. "I don't want the fee. As long as you see me in the future, you can call me Ancestor." Chapter 2663. Hearing Fengjiu's words, the middle-aged man's face turned cold. He looked at Fengjiu with his hands clasped behind his back and said in a deep voice, "You're so arrogant at such a young age. Don't forget that we've been protecting you all the way. If it weren't for us, you wouldn't have survived until now." Hearing this, Xie Yutong and Xie Yutong couldn't help but worry. Indeed, they had been protected by the Guo family all the way. Otherwise, they would have been in danger if they had traveled alone. Now that Fengjiu was acting like this, wouldn't he offend them? Shai Yutong felt a little guilty. It was all his fault for speaking carelessly. Although they had good intentions, they didn't believe Fengjiu. Instead, they looked at and spoke with contempt, which naturally annoyed Fengjiu. He knew that Fengjiu didn't seem to have a temper, but once he got angry, even he would be afraid of him. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Fengjiu twitched the corner of his mouth, revealing a faint smile. "We don't know who's protecting who. One ungrateful brat." The middle-aged man's face darkened, and he attacked Fengjiu with his pressure. But at this moment, Guaxining hurriedly stepped forward to stop him. "Uncle Sun, don't be angry. Guo Xining stood in front of Fengjiu and looked at the middle-aged man, saying, Uncle Son, the most important thing now is First Elder's injury. Fengjiu looked at the man in front of him, and his eyes flashed slightly. Guo Xining was a good person. He had repeatedly defended her, which surprised her. You leave immediately. Our Guo family disdains to be with you. A Guo family disciple pointed at Fengjiu and the other two and said, towards these three people, he had long disliked them. Their strength was low, and when they encountered trouble, they could only let them protect them. In the end, they were all injured, but these three outsiders were not injured at all. It was really annoying. Yes, get out of here. Get out of our sight. Another Guo family disciple also shouted, looking at Fengjiu and the other two with a dark face. Humph. We'd like to see how the three of you will survive without our protection. Get out of here. You're not allowed to follow us anymore. Scram now. The reprimands were harsh and disdainful, making the Xie siblings feel embarrassed. However, they did not say anything and just stood quietly beside Fengjiu. They were also the sons of aristocratic families, and this was the first time they had been scolded like this. Furthermore, they had already been together for a day and had experienced life and death. In their opinion, they were already considered familiar with this person. But now he actually turned hostile and told them to scram. They didn't do anything heinous, but they looked down on them and despised them. Fengjiu's words became the fuse that ignited their anger. Finally, they couldn't hold it in any longer and chased them away. Everyone calmed down. Guo Xining tried to calm them down so that they wouldn't act rashly. However, because they were all injured, and now that they saw that the great elder was seriously injured and unconscious, they became even more anxious. Their temper also rose, and they couldn't suppress it even if they wanted to. Xi and Ning, you don't have to stop them. Let them go. Our Guo family team can't keep people like them. The middle-aged man said with his hands behind his back. It was obvious that he wanted the three of them to leave. Chapter 2664. Uncle Son. Guo Xining had a bad feeling in his heart. His intuition told him that he couldn't let Fengjiu and the other two leave their team, otherwise it would be worse. The middle-aged man turned around with his hands behind his back and no longer looked at them. Seeing this, the other children immediately shouted, Get out of here! Get out of here! You don't go too far. Shai Yutong was a little annoyed by them again and again. How could these people be so unreasonable? They just followed them for a day. They picked up the branches themselves and ate the barbecue by themselves. Fengjiu also barbecued the meat for them. Moreover, he helped them bandage their wounds last night and gave them the medicine on his body, but now he turned his back on them. Xie Shirsi had never been yelled at by anyone. At this time, hearing this, she couldn't help shrinking her shoulders and whispering, When the wolf beast came, it was Fengjiu who protected us. You didn't protect us. She was telling the truth, but it sounded like a provocation to the children of the Guo family. One of them sneered, Oh, if it weren't for us, do you think you could still live until now? If it weren't for us fighting desperately against the wolf beasts, would you not be hurt at all? Fengjiu smiled and didn't say anything more. He just turned to Xie Shirsi and said, Let's go. As soon as his voice fell, he turned around and walked back. Fengjiu. Guo Xining quickly stepped forward and stood in front of him. He looked at him with complicated eyes. Do you really want to do this? Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled. You really shouldn't ask me this question. She chuckled, turned her head slightly to look at the children of the Guo family, and said, Tell me, which of these people in your family has looked at us seriously? Since you don't take us seriously, why should we follow you? Her voice paused for a moment, her tone filled with leisure and laziness. Her expression no longer had the simple and honest look they usually saw. Only indifference and confidence remained. If we leave you, we'll just have to take a few more detours. Your Guo family has a transmission array here, so we naturally have one too. When Guo Xining heard this, his gaze was slightly startled. He watched him walk past him and was actually unable to say a word. He also did not know how to persuade him to stay. Brother Guo, take care. Shai Yutong passed by him and said with a fist salute, Brother Gua goodbye, Xiashursi said as she quickly caught up with Fengjiu. Suddenly, she was stunned. She looked down at her feet and skipped forward. Brother, Xiao Jiu, look. My feet are healed. My feet are healed. Was he really cured? When did it get better? Shai Yutong said in surprise. He followed Fengjiu to leave while looking at his sister's feet. I don't know either. I just found out that my feet were cured. Hee. If I had known earlier, my brother wouldn't have had to carry me all the time. Fengjiu in front of them smiled and said, It's okay to let your brother carry you. Anyway, his physical strength is poor, and he should practice more. Xiaojiu, do you mean that I'm heavy? I'm not heavy. I'm not heavy, Xiashursi said with a pout. She held her brother's hand and followed Fengjiu. Watching the three of them gradually go away, Guixining's mood became inexplicably heavy for some reason. Well, get ready, we. Chapter 2665. Ferocious Beasts. Be on guard. The middle-aged man shouted, instructing everyone to be on guard and prepare for battle. However, hearing the roars of the ferocious beasts coming from all around, his heart sank. Why were there so many ferocious beasts? Judging from the sounds, there were at least a few dozen ferocious beasts. It's the ferocious beasts. Quick, be on guard. The Gua family disciples panicked. They were all injured, and hearing the roars coming from all around, they knew that it was another group of beasts. In that moment, the scene of last night's battle appeared in their minds again. Dealing with a few of them was no problem, but if another group of ferocious beasts came, they would really become food for the ferocious beasts this time. Guixining listened to the roars of the ferocious beasts coming from all around, and his heart suddenly jolted, as if something had exploded in his mind. The things that he couldn't understand, the things that he felt uneasy about, became clear at this moment. He abruptly turned around to look in the direction that Fengjiu and the others had left, only to see that the three of them had long since disappeared. Instead, what appeared around them were ferocious beasts that were baring their sharp fangs as they charged towards them. He stood there in a daze, his eyes filled with disbelief and shock, so much so that he couldn't react to the scene in front of him. Seeing that the ferocious beasts were about to pounce on him, but Guixining stood there in a daze, as if he had lost his soul, the middle-aged man immediately went forward. Xining, what are you doing? Get ready for battle. The middle-aged man's shout woke Guixining up from his daze. He looked at him and smiled bitterly. Uncle Sun, I finally know. Yes, he finally knew why Fengjiu and the other two were not injured at all when the wolves attacked last night. He finally knew why the smell of blood after last night's battle did not attract another attack from the ferocious beasts. It was because of him, because he was in their group. Thinking of his half-smile before he left, and what he said, we don't know who's protecting who, he felt his face burning. It was really him who was protecting them, but they didn't know it, and even scolded them with disdainful words, and even chased them away thinking of this. He felt bitter in his heart. This was the result of the Gua family's own actions. So who could they blame? Looking at his bitter expression, the middle-aged man was startled and asked, "No what? Uncle Sun, why do you think the smell of blood last night didn't attract another attack from the beasts?" Uncle Sun felt that when the Gua family's disciples couldn't handle the situation, would they still think about protecting Fengjiu and the Xie siblings? Why did the ferocious beasts appear as soon as the three of them left? Even though the middle-aged man didn't have the same surname, he was still quite a figure in the Gua clan. Now that the middle-aged man mentioned it, he naturally understood what the middle-aged man meant. He looked at Guixining in shock and astonishment. You're saying that this is all because of the three of them? It's not because of the three of them, but because of Fengjiu. Guixining sighed. Unfortunately, our Gua clan's disciples have thoroughly offended him. When the middle-aged man heard this, his body swayed, and he couldn't stand steadily. His face turned pale as he looked at the ferocious beasts surrounding him and the Gua family disciples retreating step by step. His lips moved, but he still couldn't believe that the young man had such ability. Chapter 2666. Roar. A beast's roar was heard, causing the air to tremble slightly. Immediately after, a lion with flames under its feet rushed over. It roared and pounced on the Guo family disciple. Hiss! Divine beast! The Guo family disciples turned pale with fright. With their strength, they were no match for a divine beast, even if they were not injured, let alone now that they were injured. Awoo! Suddenly, a wolf's howl was heard. After seeing the flaming lion and hearing the wolf's howl, everyone's mind went blank, and they had the urge to run away. It's the Wolf King. It's the wolf head. Hiss! The Wolf King is here for revenge. What should we do? What should we do? For a moment, everyone panicked. Due to the extreme fear and shock in their hearts, their reactions slowed down. In just a few breaths of time, one of the Guo family's disciples was bitten to death by the lion beast, and a few more were injured by the lion beast's claws. Cries of alarm and screams could be heard from time to time, and the scene was extremely chaotic. Calm down. Calm down. Don't panic. Don't panic. Hiss! The middle-aged man tried to calm everyone down and fight, but he was distracted by the crowd and was bitten by a fierce beast on his calf. Blood immediately flowed out. Ah! He screamed and tried to shake off the ferocious beast that was biting his leg. However, the ferocious beast seemed to want to bite off the flesh on his calf and refused to let go. Whoosh! A cold light flashed, and a sharp sword aura instantly chopped off the beast's head. Blood splattered, and the middle-aged man fell to the ground. Uncle's son, Guo held his sword in one hand and quickly helped him up. He blocked the fierce beast that pounced on him and retreated to the side of the unconscious old man. The disciples who were protecting the old man were now covered in blood. It was unknown whether the blood on their faces was theirs or the fierce beast's. They were in a killing frenzy and desperately defended the old man. In order to block the fatal blow that was pouncing towards the old man, Guo was sent flying by the snow-white wolf king that had appeared out of nowhere. The powerful impact caused Guo to lose his balance and fall outwards. The blood in his body surged, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Ning. The middle-aged man abruptly stood up with the help of a tree, but when he saw the ferocious wolf king approaching step by step, he couldn't help but shiver. On the other side, hearing the sound of the fierce beast behind them, Xie Yutong and Xie Yutong looked at each other. After hesitating for a while, Xie Yutong asked cautiously, "Xiao Jiao, what's the matter with the fierce beast behind us?" Feng Jiao smiled. What else could it be? The Wolf King must have gone back to seek revenge, and there should be other ferocious beasts along the way. After all, those ferocious beasts have been following them all the way. Ah. Have you been following me all the way? Why didn't we know about it? The CS siblings asked in unison. Even the Guo family didn't know. How could you know? She chuckled and took out a fruit to eat. Then, can the Guo family survive? Xie Yutong asked hesitantly. Hearing this, Xie Shirsi couldn't help worrying. She looked at Feng Jiao, who was eating the fruit leisurely, and asked, "Can Brother Guo survive?" Chapter 2667. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw the two of them staring straight at her. She smiled and asked, "Why are you looking at me?" "Xiao Jiao, you're very powerful, aren't you?" Just now, some fierce beast saw them, but they turned around and ran away. Feng Jiao must be very powerful, so those fierce beasts didn't dare to approach them. Feng Jiao narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "Of course, I've always been very powerful. Then you should say Brother Guo. He's a good man." Xie Shirsi looked at him expectantly, hoping that he would agree. Xie Yutong thought for a while and said, "Although the Guo family looked down on us and asked us to get out, Brother Guo is very kind to us. If possible, Xiao Jiao, you should help him." Feng Jiao ate the fruit and looked careless. "But maybe they don't need us to meddle in their business. Besides, I don't like to get close to others. They asked us to get out. How can we go back?" "Well, no, I won't do it." She shook her head and walked forward. "Xiao Jiao, Xiao Jiao." The two called him in unison and stopped him. "Why don't we go back and have a look? Didn't you say that you want to get some contract beasts back? Let's go there and have a look." Feng Jiao glanced at the two of them when she heard this, and then she said, "All right." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked back. Seeing this, Xie Shirsi and Xie Shirsi couldn't help but be happy and quickly followed him. Feng Jiu led them back. When they got close to the place, she took a deep breath and brought them up a big tree. She let them stand while hugging the branches. Then, she found a place to sit down and took out a fruit to eat, as if she was indifferent to the bloody and tragic scene in front of her. When the CS siblings saw the scene in front of them, they couldn't help but exclaim. CS Shirsi covered her mouth, and her eyes widened in horror as she looked ahead. In front of them, dozens of ferocious beasts were ferociously attacking the Guo family. Some of them were the wolves that escaped last night, and some were other ferocious beasts. Among them, the ones that shocked them the most were the flaming lion and the snow-white wolf king. These two ferocious beasts had already reached the level of divine beasts. The members of the Guo clan were already injured, and now they were even more injured. Among them, many were bitten to death by the ferocious beasts. Those who were still alive were badly mutilated, as if they had just crawled up from a pile of corpses. They couldn't help but shudder at the sight. Their exclamations were covered by the screams and roars, and no one noticed that the three of them were watching. However, the two mythological beasts seemed to have sensed something and looked towards Feng Jiu's direction. It was also at that moment that Guo Xinning, who was fighting with the mythological beasts, instinctively looked in the direction of the two mythological beasts. In the next moment, his eyes narrowed. He saw that on a big tree about 50 meters away, Feng Jiu was sitting on the tree and eating a fruit, while the Xie siblings were standing on his left and right. When he saw him, it was as if he saw his savior, and he shouted, "Feng Jiu, help!" Chapter 2668. However, as soon as his cry for help fell, he was knocked out by the Wolf King. At the same time, another wolf beast rushed forward to bite his neck. Seeing this scene, the Xie siblings exclaimed. Shai Yutong looked at Feng Jiu, while Xie Shirsi covered her eyes and did not dare to look at the bloody scene. She was afraid that if she opened her eyes, she would see the scene of Guo Xinning's neck being bitten off. The wounds on his body had been bleeding all the time, and the battle consumed a lot of physical strength. At this time, he was knocked out again. Before he could catch his breath, he saw a wolf beast rush up and bite his neck. The smell of death was so close, and despair enveloped him in an instant. Was he going to die? Was he going to die here? In an instant, thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind. In the end, they stopped at the moment when Feng Jiu and the others turned around and left. If he had known, he would have begged them to stay. If they had stayed, would such a scene have not happened? Even though he was unwilling, even though he didn't want to die like this, his hand felt as heavy as 1,000 kilograms, and he couldn't lift it. He raised his head and stared angrily and unwillingly at the wolf beast that was pouncing at him. Even if he died, he would drag this wolf beast down with him. However, just when he was determined to die, he heard a sharp sound in the air. With a whoosh, the wolf beast's head was hit at a speed that was too fast for him to cover his ears. Bang! With a bang, the wolf's head exploded in front of him. Brain matter and blood splattered out and covered his body. He stared blankly at the fallen wolf. Among the splattered brain matter, there was a fruit core stained with blood that fell to the ground. He killed a wolf head with a fruit core? Furthermore, he had accurately blasted the wolf beast's head from a distance of 50 meters away. Feng Jiu, how powerful is he? He slowly turned his head and looked at the big tree where Feng Jiu was sitting. He saw the young man in green sitting there leisurely, looking up at him. His cold and lazy voice traveled into his ears with a hint of insouciance. Actually, you shouldn't have asked me for help. I'm just an ignorant kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. People like me need your protection. How could he have the ability to save you? Hearing this, Guo Xinning smiled bitterly. He was indeed angry. When the Guo family disciples heard Feng Jiu's voice, they glanced around and saw the three people on the tree. Their eyes widened. You're still alive? Yes. They thought that the three of them should have been bitten to death before the beasts attacked them. They didn't expect that the three of them were still alive and had come here to watch the show. When they thought of the sorry state they were in, the dead or injured, besieged by the beasts in despair, but the three of them were still standing on the tree, unharmed. This scene shocked and stunned them. We're alive and well, not like you, besieged by beasts," Feng said leisurely as he leaned on the tree branch and watched the show. Chapter 2669. Feng he's actually back. And he's right there, but the beasts here didn't attack him. Instead, they consciously avoided him. If he didn't want to admit that Guixining's words were right, then after seeing this scene, his insistence finally crumbled. Was he the one who harmed the Gua family? He was the one who put them in such a dangerous situation. It was him. He forced himself to stand up and looked at Feng Jiu, who was sitting on the tree. He held the sword in his hand and said, "I've offended you, so I'll apologize to you with my death. Please don't hold a grudge against this lowly person and lend me a hand." With that, he placed the sword in his hand across his neck and reached out to wipe it. Uncle Son, everyone exclaimed, but because they were fighting the beasts, they couldn't stop him. Just as he was about to wipe his sword and commit suicide, a gust of wind swept past and struck his hand down. Clang! The sword in the middle-aged man's hand fell to the ground. He stared blankly at Feng Jiu, only to feel that the hand holding the sword was numb and trembling slightly. Seeing this scene, Guixining heaved a sigh of relief. The other Gua family members also relaxed. However, their hearts were filled with complicated feelings of shock. Why was it Feng Jiu, a young man who was clearly not in their eyes? Could it be that in the end, he was the one who could save them? Why was it him? They thought about how they chased him away and spoke unkindly. Now that they wanted to ask for his help, they couldn't say a word. Feng Jiu glanced at the middle-aged man and said to the Xie siblings, "Aren't you looking for contracted beasts? Go down. That wolf and lion look pretty good." "Ah!" The two of them exclaimed, their faces full of astonishment. That's a divine beast. We can't beat it." Feng Jiu tilted his head slightly and smiled. "It's a divine beast. Since you want to form a contract, you naturally have to form a contract with a divine beast." As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her hand and sent the two of them in front of the two divine beasts. The Xie siblings cried out in alarm. When they landed on the ground, they saw that they were standing in front of a mythological beast. They were so scared that their faces turned pale, especially Xie Shirsi. When she saw a wolf king that was half a head taller than her and bared its fangs, her legs trembled. "Fight!" When Feng Jiu's voice came out, it shook the hearts of the two. Their original fear was dispersed by Feng Jiu's words. They clenched their fists tightly and roared as they rushed towards the mythological beast in front of them. "Ah!" Shai Yutong roared. His hands containing spiritual power slammed forward, but the flame lion in front of him easily avoided. The lion raised its head slightly and raised its chin, looking at Shai Yutong with contempt, but it didn't attack Shai Yutong, not because it was afraid of him, but because it was afraid of the human sitting in the tree. Shai Yutong approached step by step, and the lion also dodged. After dodging more than a dozen moves, it was a little annoyed. It glared at Shai Yutong, and the divine beast's coercion attacked Shai Yutong. Under its coercion, the human who had rushed up fell to the ground and could not stand up. It turned back angrily and stared at the boy sitting in the tree eating fruit, and a low and majestic voice came out with anger. "Human, what are you doing?" Chapter 2670. I'll find you a master. As Feng Jiu spoke, he propped himself up on the tree branch and leaped forward. His green figure landed lightly on the ground. At the same time, he released his ancient aura. At that moment, the ferocious beasts that were attacking the Gua family members all howled and fell to the ground in fear, not daring to continue fighting. Ancient aura! The middle-aged man widened his eyes in shock, his heart trembling. Under the pervasive aura, he couldn't even stand still. His legs gave way and he fell to the ground. It was an ancient aura. It was an ancient aura. When the aura spread, not only the ferocious beasts, but even the Gua family members couldn't stand still. They were still in a state of shock when the aura dissipated. This was an ancient aura? If Uncle Son hadn't said that it was an ancient aura, they wouldn't have known what this powerful aura was. But how could such a young man possess an ancient aura? Even if they didn't want to admit it, they had to admit that Fengjiu had saved them. Just one aura was enough to make the ferocious beasts fall to their knees. Guaxining looked at Fengjiu with a complicated and shocked expression. He had guessed that Fengjiu was very powerful, but he didn't expect him to be this powerful. Ancient aura? No wonder he could faintly sense an aura last night, but he couldn't put his finger on it. It was an ancient aura. The Wolf King and Lion saw that the situation wasn't good and immediately prepared to leave. She released her aura and instantly stunned the two ferocious beasts. Under the powerful aura, even the two mythical beasts had to lie on the ground and tremble. I'm just finding you a master. Why are you running? Fengjiu walked forward and stroked the Wolf King's silver-white fur. He turned back to look at the stunned Xie family siblings. Which one do you like? Choose for yourself. These two mythical beasts? The brother and sister stared dumbfoundedly, their hearts thumping wildly. These were mythical beasts. Mythical beasts with shocking battle power. Were they going to be contracted beasts? Well, these two. Fengjiu touched the Wolf King's head, which made the Wolf King squint and look up at her. I want the lion. This lion is so majestic. Its 4 feet are stepping on flames. I like it. Shy Yutong immediately rushed forward, but when he saw the lion's eyes, he was shocked. Fengjiu narrowed his eyes and glanced at the lion. The lion immediately wilted and said with slight dissatisfaction, If you want to find a master for this king, why don't you find someone stronger? Is he worthy of being my master? With his strength? It's too shameful. Calm. Shy Yutong shy. He was indeed weak. Strength can be improved. How old is he? There's still a long way to go. Fengjiu said, motioning Shy Yutong to come forward. Seeing this, Shy Yutong bravely stepped forward and looked at the lion, saying, I will become very strong in the future. Hearing this, the lion looked at Shy Yutong in surprise. After thinking for a while, he looked at Fengjiu and finally lowered his head. Even if he didn't bow his head, he would be suppressed by this terrible human. The ancient aura of this human was so overwhelming that he couldn't resist. Chapter 2671. Seeing Shy Yutong reach out his hand and make a natal contract with a mythological beast, all the people present were envious of him. They envied him for being so lucky to know Fengjiu and get his help to make a contract with such a powerful mythological beast. When Xie excitedly stepped forward, the silver wolf, which was enjoying Fengjiu's touch, suddenly stood up. It opened its eyes and bared its sharp fangs. It let out a low growl and stared at Xie with a ferocious look. Its expression was as if it would pounce on her and tear her to pieces if she dared to take another step forward. Xie was shocked. She stepped back a few steps and fell to the ground, looking at the ferocious Wolf King with a frightened face. It's so scary. It's so scary. I don't want it. I don't want it. Xie shook her head and said. She got up and hid behind her brother. Hearing this, the Gua family members all breathed quickly. They looked at Fengjiu and the Wolf King with bright eyes, as if they wanted to come forward and say, if I don't want it, I want it. However, no one dared to open their mouths about it. Little sure, are you stupid? That's a mythological beast. No matter how unreliable Shy Yutong was, he knew that this mythological beast was hard to come by, especially when Fengjiu was here to help them make a contract. If it were them, they would not be able to make a contract with a mythological beast. No, it's so fierce and scary. I'm so afraid of it. After all, Xie was a girl. Although she also liked pets, she felt that this mythological beast was too powerful. Its eyes were so scary that she did not dare to make a contract with it. Hearing Xie words, the Wolf King narrowed its eyes and grinned like a human, showing its teeth. It looked at Fengjiu and said directly, I want to be your contract beast. Hearing this, the lion, who had just been contracted by Shy Yutong, could not help but widen its eyes. You're asking for too much. No, I'm a lion. I dare not ask for it. How could it not know that the young man in Cyan was the most powerful one? It would be best if it recognized him as its master, but even it didn't dare to ask. This wolf actually dared to recommend itself. Feng Jiu was also slightly surprised. She looked at the wolf king that was rubbing against her palm and could not help but laugh. "You want to acknowledge me as your master?" "Yes, master, please accept me." The wolf king immediately put away its ferocious and bloodthirsty side and squatted on the ground, its two front paws bowing in front of its body like a puppy trying to please her. Xiaoshirsi's eyes widened when she saw this. She couldn't believe that the ferocious wolf king had such a side to him. Seeing this, Feng Jiu chuckled. "It's just that I have too many contracted beasts. Master, I eat very little, and I will be very obedient." The wolf king whimpered as it reached out a paw and gently placed it on Feng Jiu's hand, trying its best to please her. "Roar! You're shameless." When the lion saw this scene, he was almost furious. How could he not know that this wolf was so shameless? "Master!" The wolf king squatted on the ground and looked at Feng Jiu. Seeing this, Feng Jiu thought for a moment and said, "All right, follow me first." "No, shrink a little. It's too big." As soon as she finished speaking, the wolf king was overjoyed. It turned around, and with a flash of light, it rushed to her like a puppy and hugged her feet tightly with its paws. Chapter 2672. At this moment, Guaxining helped the middle-aged man to his feet. He limped forward to Feng Jiu, pushed away Guaxining who was supporting him, and knelt down with a thud. "Thank you for saving me." His voice was low and choked with sobs. If he had not appeared, if he had not intervened, none of them would have survived. He knelt down to admit his mistake and to express his gratitude. Seeing that the middle-aged man had knelt down, the Guo family disciples looked at each other and knelt down as well. "Thank you for saving us. We're sorry," they said in unison. They sounded weak, and it was obvious that they did not have enough blood. That was to be expected. All of them were injured. It was already not easy for them to survive this battle. Feng Jiu did not look at them. Instead, she said to the CS siblings, "Let's go." With that, she turned and left. The CS siblings hesitated for a moment and looked at Guaxining. Guaxining quickly stepped forward. Feng Jiu. He quickly walked in front of Feng Jiu. Looking at the cold young man in front of him, he moved his lips and said in a hoarse voice, "Can you please stay and escort us to the teleportation array? If you leave, I'm afraid we won't be able to reach the teleportation array." With that, he lifted his robe and knelt down. "Please escort us." Seeing this, Feng Jiu frowned. She looked at Guaxining, who was kneeling in front of her, and was silent for a long time before saying, "Get up." Hearing this, Guaxining looked up. "Do you agree? After we get out, I don't want to hear about what happened to me to be spread." Her voice was faint as she looked at Guaxining. Hearing this, Guaxining was slightly startled. Then he said, "I know what to do. What happened here will not be mentioned outside." With that, he looked at the other Guo family disciples. Everyone understood what he meant and immediately spoke up to guarantee it. Seeing this, Feng Jiu said, "Get up, all of you. Treat your wounds." She looked at the wolf king at her feet and said, "Let the wolves disperse." "Yes, master," the wolf king replied. It raised its head and howled, causing the pack of wolves to run away. Those ferocious beasts also quickly fled, not daring to stay for long. The members of the Guo family could finally breathe a sigh of relief. They helped each other to the side to tend to their wounds. However, they didn't have any medicine to begin with. After being injured again, they could only use a simple cloth to tie their wounds. They didn't even apply any medicine. Feng Jiu glanced at them and said to them, "Those who are lightly injured and still have the strength to walk, come with me." Then he asked Shai Yutong and the lion to stay and guard them. The crowd didn't know what he meant, but they didn't dare to ask. Only 4 or 5 people stood up and followed him into the forest. Xiaoshirsi and Guaxining walked beside Feng Jiu. Xiaoshirsi couldn't help but ask curiously, "Xiao Jiu, where are we going?" "Picking herbs," Feng Jiu said, glancing around. Along the way, he bent down from time to time to pick a few inconspicuous herbs. Finally, he handed them to them. Pick according to this and this. Only then did the crowd know that he took them to pick herbs. However, looking at the inconspicuous herbs, they were a little doubtful. Was it really useful? Pick according to this. Just look around. Don't go too far, Guo Xining said to the people behind him. Yes. The few of them responded and then dispersed. Chapter 2673. I know a thing or two, Feng Jiu said and glanced at him. Didn't I tell you before? Guo Xining's eyes flickered. He did, but no one believed him. Now, he couldn't help but feel a trace of anticipation. Then can you treat the first elder's injury? Feng Jiu pursed her lips. This isn't a matter of whether I can treat him or not, but whether I want to treat him or not. Hearing this, Guo Xining pondered. Then what will it take for you to be willing to treat him? That great elder of yours is a person who is about to die. Originally, I decided to treat him based on my mood. Now that you want me to treat him, you have to give me something of equivalent value. She looked at Guo Xining and narrowed her eyes. Your first elder's life is precious, right? Hearing this, Guo Xining nodded. Precious. He is a core member of our family. If he dies, it will be a great loss to our family. He paused for a moment, then said, Don't worry. As long as you save him, I can promise you that when we return to the family, we will reward you handsomely. Do I look like someone who lacks money? Feng Jiu raised her eyebrows. Guo Xining was stunned, then asked, Then what do you want? Let me think about it. Then we'll talk about it. She walked forward and looked around. Then she shouted, Little Sure, come over here and pick this too. After about half an hour, they came back carrying a lot of herbs. The others didn't recognize these herbs, but when they saw them come back, they couldn't help but be surprised. There should be someone among you who knows medicine, right? Do you know how to deal with these things? Feng Jiu asked, her gaze sweeping across the Guo family. I know. The middle-aged man hid his surprise and said to the Guo family disciples, Crush the herbs and apply them to the wound. These are herbs that stop bleeding and reduce inflammation. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, everyone immediately moved. Feng Jiu, help the first elder take a look, Guo Xining said. Seeing this, Feng Jiu walked towards the unconscious old man. Although the old man was unconscious, he was still well protected by them. Evidently, the Guo family's disciples knew how important the old man was. Yutong, come and help. Feng Jiu ordered Guo Xining to take off the old man's shirt while he took out a small knife from his space. The middle-aged man limped to the side and watched. He watched as Feng Jiu burned the sharp knife and removed the festering flesh bit by bit. Then he took out some medicine and sprinkled it on the wound. Finally, he took out a pill and stuffed it into the first elder's mouth. What made him feel incredulous was that after a while, the originally unconscious great elder actually slowly woke up. Seeing this, he felt that it was extremely inconceivable. Great elder, great elder, great elder. One by one, they surrounded him, and when they saw that he had woken up, they all smiled in surprise. Looking at the blood-stained bodies of the people surrounding him, the old man frowned. What happened? How? How did you all get injured like this? The old man's voice was weak, but his words were very clear. It's a long story, great elder. It's good that you're fine. Guo Xining finally breathed a sigh of relief and asked someone to look after the great elder, while he went to Feng Jiu, who was playing with the Wolf King. Chapter 2674. He looked hesitant and wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. Feng Jiu glanced at him and said, If you have something to say, say it. I want to ask you to help Uncle's son see if his leg can be cured. As he spoke, he looked back at the middle-aged man who was sitting under the tree with a pale face but was still enduring the pain. Uncle's son is actually a very good person. Although he is a foreigner, he is very loyal to our Guo family. He didn't mean to offend you before, but he didn't know and didn't dare to believe that you were protecting us. He tried his best to say good things for the middle-aged man, hoping that Feng Jiu could help him see the wound on his leg. After all, the bite of the wolf was so deep that the bone could be seen. He had been holding on until now, so he didn't know if his leg could still be cured. Feng Jiu glanced at him and followed his gaze to the middle-aged man under the tree. After thinking for a while, he stood up and walked over to him, saying, "Cut the corner of your trousers." Guaxining, who followed him, quickly stepped forward and cut the corner of his trousers, revealing the wound that was so deep that the bone could be seen and blood was still oozing out. The rows of wolf teeth marks made him shudder involuntarily. The wolf had bitten so deeply. "My leg is crippled, and it can't be healed." Before Zhang Xian could finish his words, Feng Jiu spat a mouthful of wine onto his calf. The wine landed on his wound, and Zhang Xian cried out in pain, nearly fainting on the spot. Guaxining's heart was in his throat. The wound was painful, not to mention the wine sprayed on it. That kind of pain was worse than death, wasn't it? It was bitten by a wolf. "It can't be disinfected without wine," she said lightly, put away the wine, and muttered, "I wasted 2 mouthfuls of good wine." The middle-aged man didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he didn't speak again. He just looked at the boy squatting beside him. "Xiaojiu, do you need my help?" Shai Yutong came forward and asked. "Well, clean the wound," Feng Jiu said as he prepared something. "All right." Shai Yutong had been quite skilled in cleaning and bandaging people's wounds in the past 2 days. He immediately stepped forward to clean the middle-aged man's wound, but the blood kept flowing. He couldn't help looking back at Feng Jiu. "The wound is still bleeding. What should I do?" "It's okay. I won't stay for long." As she spoke, she turned around with the threaded silver in her hand. She looked at the middle-aged man and said, "The flesh on your leg was almost bitten off. I have to tie it up. It will hurt a little, so bear with it." "Branch, bite it." Shai Yutong picked up a branch beside him and handed it to him to bite. The middle-aged man looked at the needle in Feng Jiu's hand, and his heart skipped a beat. This needle? Was it sewn? Will this work? Feng Jiu glanced at him. "Sure." Hearing this, the middle-aged man could only bite the branch and endure it. "Wipe the blood when it comes out. Don't block the place where I'm stitching," she told Shai Yutong. "Okay, I see," he responded, but he was also a little curious. How did the needle sew the flesh? Until he saw Feng Jiu sewing the bitten flesh with a needle and thread like sewing clothes, his heart trembled. It turned out that the sewing technique could be used like this. Chapter 2675. Guaxining was shocked to see Feng Jiu take the needle to close the wound that had been bitten open. He watched Feng Jiu tie a knot, and the bleeding wound finally stopped. Guaxining couldn't help exhaling a sigh of relief, feeling incredible. "I never knew that the embroidery needle could be used in this way. This is not an embroidery needle." Feng Jiu pursed his lips and smiled. "This is a suture needle that I ordered specially." After dealing with the needle, she put it away and said to Guaxining, "The thread of his calf can be broken in 7 days. Don't let him walk during this time, and don't let the wound worsen." "Okay, I see." Guaxining nodded and looked after the middle-aged man. From time to time, he looked at the old man. Feng Jiu went to rest under the tree and looked at the wounded Guo family members sitting on the ground. His eyes flashed, and he closed his eyes to rest. Shai Yutong came to him and saw that he was resting with his eyes closed. Knowing that he was not asleep, Shai Yutong said, "Xiaojiu, in fact, you have a good heart." Hearing this, Feng Jiu opened his eyes and glanced at him with a faint smile. "I have a good heart." "Yes." Shai Yutong nodded seriously and said, "You are so powerful. If other people were as powerful as you, they wouldn't have saved the Guo family, even if they didn't step on them. But you are different. You just saved them after venting your anger." This was different from many powerful people. His grandfather and father often told him that the more powerful a person was, the less he cared about the lives of the weak. A verbal conflict could kill people. However, after getting along with Feng Jiu, he felt that although he was unfathomable, he would not kill people cruelly at will, which was really much better than others. Hearing this, Feng Jiu smirked and glanced at the rest of the Guo clan members. "That's because they didn't want to kill me. If they did, it would be different." After resting, the group continued on their journey. This time, no one dared to show any dissatisfaction or contempt towards Feng Jiu's group. Following Feng Jiu, the group passed through the forest and climbed over the mountains. It was only at noon the next day that they arrived at the Guo family's transmission array. "It's here." As the old man spoke, he pointed at the place in front of them and looked at Fengjiu. "This is the Guo family's teleportation array." Although his face was still pale, it was much better than yesterday. Perhaps because he knew of Fengjiu's methods, he treated Fengjiu with utmost respect, even though he was the Guo clan's grand elder. "Let's split into two groups," Guo Xining said to Fengjiu. "As long as we open the array, we can reach the transmission array at the back of the Guo clan's mountain." Fengjiu nodded and glanced at Shai Yutong. "Put your lion into the contract space." "Oh, okay." Shai Yutong responded and put the lion away. She looked at the wolf cub at her feet and saw that it was snow white all over and was squatting like a puppy. It opened its mouth and stuck out its tongue. She smiled and did not say anything else. The Grand Elder asked Guo Xining to open the transmission array and let some people enter it first. With a flash of light, the group of people disappeared in the array with the middle-aged man. "Let's go." Guo Xining looked at Fengjiu and the others. Chapter 2676. In the Guo family, when the blood-stained Guo family members carried the pale, middle-aged man back to the front yard of the Guo family, the entire Guo family was shaken, and the people in charge all rushed over. Elder son, how did you get hurt so badly?" An old man who was on good terms with the middle-aged man came forward and looked at the circle of bite marks on his calf. He couldn't help but gasp. "I thought I wouldn't be able to see you again." The middle-aged man pulled the corners of his mouth and revealed a smile. He finally felt relieved after returning to the family. Finally, he was back at the family. He was safe. "Quick, carry him to the backyard. I'll check your wounds," the old man said, and called for the guards to replace the two injured disciples who were carrying Elder Sunday. "Don't worry. I didn't die in there. I shouldn't die." Elder Sun smiled. His face was pale and weak. This injury made this man, who was in his 60s but looked like he was in his 40s, look a lot older. People who knew medicine paid attention to their own health, especially when he was considered the best in the Guo family. However, after this incident, he was exhausted. "Did you encounter a herd of beasts? Why do your wounds look?" The old man found it strange. These were bite marks from ferocious beasts. They were very obvious, but what surprised him was that such a large wound was sewn up with thread. "What happened? Are the great elder and the others back?" A middle-aged man strode in. This man was the head of the Guo family. When he heard that the people who entered the forest of 1,000 poisons had returned and were covered in wounds and blood, he immediately rushed over. "Head of the family," Elder Sun called out weakly. He watched as the head of the family quickly came to his side. "Elder Sun, how did you get hurt like this?" The head of the Guo family was a little surprised. He thought that the Guo family's disciples were injured. He didn't expect that even Elder Sun was injured like this. "Patriarch, it's not just me. The great elder is also seriously injured. This time, it's fortunate that..." He paused when he saw that there were many people around, but he quickly changed the topic. "The great elder and the others are coming later. Let's wait for the great elder to tell you about this matter." All right. You should return to the courtyard first. Your injuries need to be treated again," Patriarch Guo said. He then turned to the old man beside him and said, "Go and take a look at him. Use the best medicine. You must cure Elder Sunday." "Yes, Patriarch, don't worry," the old man said, then signaled for the two guards to carry him to the backyard. "Greetings, Patriarch." At this moment, the Guo family disciples who were supporting each other bowed respectfully. Their clothes were tattered, and dried blood covered their bodies. There were bloodstains and stains on their faces. Their eyes were red, and their expressions were agitated. They came back alive. They thought that they would never be able to return to the Guo family and see their parents and relatives again. "My son, how did you get hurt like this? A woman hurriedly ran over and threw herself into the arms of a Guo family's disciple who was covered in wounds. She cried and wailed, but then she seemed to come to her senses and hurriedly retreated, not daring to touch him for fear of touching his wounds. She was nervous and worried, but she didn't know where to start. Mother, mother, mother. Chapter 26:77. Another woman hurriedly pushed aside the guards blocking the way and quickly ran in. She pulled the injured Guo family disciples and looked for her son. Where's my son? Where's my son? Where's my Xinjia? Have you seen Xinjia? Where's Xinjia? The woman asked anxiously, pulling at the wounds on some of the disciples, causing them to gasp. Xinjia is dead. One of the Guo family disciples said, He's dead. When the woman heard this, she took a step back and widened her eyes in disbelief. Dead? How can this be? My Xinjia is such an outstanding child. How can he die? I don't believe it. He's dead. He's really dead. Another Guo clan disciple said. As soon as he finished speaking, the woman quickly stepped forward and grabbed him by the collar. Dead? Really dead? Why are you still alive? Why didn't you save him? Woo-woo. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. She pounded the disciple, causing him to scream. He felt the injuries on his body begin to hurt again. All right, pull her away. When the Guo family head saw this, he frowned and ordered, Can't you see that he's injured? How can you do this? The woman wailed as she was dragged away and sat on the ground. A middle-aged man who came from behind saw this and quickly went forward. When he found out that his son was dead, his face turned pale. However, he did not cry like the woman. Instead, he asked, How did he die? His gaze swept across the surviving disciples. His heart sank when he saw that all of them were seriously injured. First, we were attacked by a pack of wolves. Then, we were attacked by 2 divine beasts and dozens of other beasts. We were already injured, and under such circumstances, we could only fight to the death. Because of this, many of us died. Those who survived were all injured and on the verge of death. He glanced at the patriarch and the middle-aged man and said, Not only that, Uncle's son's calf was bitten by the wolf beast and his entire leg was almost bitten off. Apart from that, there are countless injuries on his body. The great elder was seriously injured in order to repel the wolf king. His internal organs were damaged and his external injuries were infected. He almost lost his life. Hearing this, those who had not experienced this scene were shocked. How tragic must the scene be to cause so many people to be injured? How fierce was the battle that caused the lives of the great elder and Uncle's son to be in danger? Quick, send someone to the teleportation array at the back of the mountain to pick up great elder and the others. The patriarch reacted and hurriedly sent someone to pick them up. The middle-aged man was silent for a while before asking, 2 divine beasts and dozens of vicious beasts attacked. How did you survive? When the older man heard this, his heart trembled slightly. He sighed inwardly. As expected of a member of the clan, he hit the nail on the head. However, although they all knew about this matter, they couldn't casually speak of it. Therefore, he paused for a moment and said, The grand elder and the others will tell the patriarch about this matter in detail. As soon as his voice fell, he no longer spoke. Chapter 26:78. Patriarch, the first elder greeted. Just as he was about to salute, Patriarch Guo had already stepped forward to support him. First elder is injured. There's no need for such formalities. Patriarch Guo said as he looked at the Guo family disciples supporting each other, It's good that you're back. All of you go back to rest and treat your injuries. Everyone nodded and supported each other as they left. Only the great elder, Fengjio, and the Xie siblings remained. The crying woman had already been helped back to the courtyard by the middle-aged man. At this moment, he looked at Fengjio and the others and asked, May I know who these people are? Cough, cough, cough. First elder coughed lightly. Patriarch saw this and said, First elder, go back to the courtyard and rest. I'll have someone treat your injuries. We'll talk about the rest later. Okay. First elder nodded and said to Patriarch Guo, please take good care of these 3 people. Patriarch was heart shook when he heard this. He looked at Fengjio and the other 2 and said to First elder, Rest assured, First elder. Hearing this, the first elder nodded to Fengjio and the other 2. Then he was supported by the 2 guards and returned to the courtyard. Gua Xining stood at the side and said, "Father, I'll bring them to rest first." "Okay, go ahead." Patriarch Gua replied. He looked at Fengjiu and the Xie siblings and said with a smile, "The three of you can stay in my residence and have a good rest. If there's anything you need, just let the servants know." "Many thanks, Patriarch Gua," the three said and left with Gua Xining. The middle-aged man frowned and stepped forward to ask, "Patriarch, you didn't even ask who these three people are. Why did you let them go?" Patriarch Gua glanced at him and said, "Since First Elder told us to treat them with respect, there must be a reason. As for the reason, let's wait for First Elder and Elder Son to rest before asking." The middle-aged man clenched his fists and nodded before turning to leave. Patriarch Gua looked at him and sighed softly in his heart. Who would have thought that they would lose several Gua family disciples on this trip? However, the world was changeable and the Great Tao was ruthless. The road of cultivation was not easy to walk. Who knew what would happen tomorrow? Gua Xining took the three of them to a courtyard and said, "You can live in this courtyard first. There are several rooms here. If you live together, you can take care of each other. If there's anything else, you can ask the servants. I'll come to find you later." "Okay." Fengjiu nodded to leave. "How long?" Hearing this, Feng He looked at Shai Yutong and said, "Go and find out how far it is from here to the city where your family is. In addition, help me get water ready. I want to take a bath." "Okay." Shai Yutong answered. He told his sister and walked out of the yard. Because Fengjiu had been protecting them all the way, and Fengjiu had helped him contract as contract beast, Fengjiu's status had long been different in his heart. Therefore, he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with being ordered around by him. Instead, he felt that it was natural for him to do so. "Little thing, come here." Fengjiu sat down at the stone table in the courtyard and called the silver wolf that was wandering around. Chapter 2679. This name? She held her chin and thought for a while. Old White has a name. Little White also has a name. As for you, she stroked its silvery white fur and suddenly grinned. "You're a silver wolf, so I'll call you Silver." "Silver? Silver?" It was still thinking about what kind of majestic and domineering voice its master could give it. Who knew that she gave it such a tacky name? How short was its master on earth? Puff! Xie on one side laughed when she heard the name. "Silver? Hee, this name is good. Silver, Silver, how nice it sounds. It's a pity that I can't spend this silver. Master, how about changing it?" It lay down and pulled Fengjiu's clothes with its claws. "Just call it Silver. Also, don't talk, so as not to scare people." Fengjiu told it. Seeing the maidservant not far away carrying water in, she stood up and said to Xie, "I'll go back to my room first. Don't run around." "Well, I know," Xie responded. She walked to the room and stretched her waist. "I also want to go back and lie down. I haven't had a good rest these 2 days. I'm exhausted." After the maidservant prepared the water for the bath, Feng 9 went in. Silver Wolf was about to follow her, but she let the maidservant close the door. "Guard the door. No one is allowed to come in without my order." Hearing this, the Silver Wolf looked up at her and whimpered in response. Then it squatted by the door and guarded it. It hadn't been contracted by its master yet. It must perform well and strive to contract with its master as soon as possible. In the room, Fengjiu closed her eyes comfortably in the bathtub. She closed her eyes to rest and let her body soak in the hot water. As soon as she relaxed, she fell asleep inadvertently. After a long time, Shai Yutong's voice came from outside. "Xiaojiu, Xiaojiu." She opened her eyes in the bathtub and felt that the water in the bathtub was cold. She got up and dried the water on her body. She took out a set of green clothes to put on, dried her black hair, and simply tied it up. Then she opened the door and went out. "Xiaojiu, I know where we are." When Shai Yutong saw him come out, he quickly stepped forward and said, "This place is neither close nor far from my home. If we go back by sword, we should be able to get home in 1 day." Fengjiu nodded. "If that's the case, let's have a good rest today. We'll leave tomorrow." "Okay," Shai Yutong replied. "Then I'll take a bath first." Feng nodded and returned to the room. The silver wolf was still guarding outside the room. After entering the room, Feng didn't rest. Instead, he flashed into the space to cultivate. On the other side, Guaxining had just walked out of his room after bathing and treating his wounds when he saw his father sitting in the courtyard. Seeing this, he paused for a moment before walking up to him. "Father, Xi and Ning, how are your injuries? Is it important?" Patriarch Gua asked. Looking at his second son, he felt that his son seemed to have calmed down a lot after going out for a while. "It's all right. Don't worry, father," Guaxining said. He came to the table in the courtyard and sat down. He asked, "Father, do you have something to ask me?" "Yes." Patriarch Gua nodded. Chapter 2680. Guaxining paused for a moment, as if he was thinking about how to talk about this matter. After a long time, he said, "Father, 2 of the 3 people today are the Xie siblings, and one of them is Fengjiu. We met them in the forest. They said they got lost after being separated from their family." Hearing this, Patriarch Guo was slightly stunned. "Oh, people from the Xie family? Which Xie family?" The strength of the 3 people seems to be in the foundation establishment stage. What kind of family would allow such a powerful disciple to go to that place to gain experience? Hearing his father's words, Guaxining couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that even his father couldn't see through Fengjiu's strength. Even his father couldn't see through Fengjiu's strength. How powerful was Fengjiu? "I don't know which Xie family they are from, because we didn't ask them where they came from. So, they beg you to take them out?" Patriarch Guo looked at his son and asked, "Is this matter related to them?" He noticed that the Guo family's disciples were all injured, but the 3 people looked full of spirit and didn't seem to be injured. Guaxining shook his head. "It's a bit complicated. At first, they just asked us how to get out of the forest. In the end, Shai Yutong and the others just asked how to get out of the forest, but he invited them to go with him. They went with us, and it was quite peaceful along the way. Even if they occasionally encountered a few fierce beasts, they were no match for us at all, until we were attacked by a pack of wolves." Speaking of this, his expression was complicated. There were dozens of wolves in the pack, and many of them were at the holy beast level, especially the Wolf King, which was at the divine beast level. In order to repel the wolves, First Elder and Uncle Son fought against the Wolf King. In the end, both of them came back with injuries, especially First Elder. Everyone was injured in this battle. Moreover, their injuries were not light. However, Fengjiu and the Xie siblings were not injured in this battle. Hearing this, Patriarch Guo looked dignified and surprised. "Even you were injured. How could the 3 of them not be injured? What's the reason?" "Yes, even we are injured, but the 3 of them are not injured at all. Who would believe that?" He muttered with a bitter smile. "I asked them that time, and they said that it was because of our Guo family's disciples that they weren't injured." Hearing this, Patriarch Guo furrowed his brows and said without thinking, "The Guo family's disciples can't even protect themselves, so why would they protect them? Impossible." "Father, you're right." He looked at his father and said, "If I could see this clearly at that time, I reckon that later things wouldn't have happened." And then, as Patriarch Guo listened to him talk about this matter, he felt as if his heart had been lifted and then relaxed. Even he couldn't guess what had happened inside. Guaxining did not tell him what happened after that. He only said, "Father, at that time, we were heavily injured and it was late at night, so we did not leave after being attacked by the wolves. Instead, we were resting." "What?" Family head Guo was shocked. "After the battle, the stench of blood is so thick. Why didn't you leave? The smell of blood must have attracted the ferocious beasts to attack you in the middle of the night. That's why your team suffered such heavy casualties, right?" Chapter 2681. Wrong. Patriarch Guo was stunned and didn't know how to react. "Yes, wrong. That night, even though the smell of blood was very strong, not a single beast came near. The latter half of the night was very peaceful, and everyone rested for the night." "That's impossible." Patriarch Gua stood up, clasped his hands behind his back, and said, "Let's not talk about the night. Even during the day, in that kind of place, the smell of blood would have attracted the beasts. That night, you didn't leave, so how could not a single beast come near you? This doesn't make sense." Patriarch was said, stomping his feet in the courtyard. Suddenly, as if he thought of something, he stopped and looked back at Guaxining, asking, "That night, did you send anyone to patrol? Who was the one patrolling?" Hearing this, Guaxining admired him from the bottom of his heart. No wonder his father could control the entire Gua clan and become the patriarch of the Gua clan. His ability to see through things was truly unmatched. It was me and Fengjiu. At this point, he believed that with his father's wisdom, he must have thought of the reason. The wolf pack attacked, and you didn't get hurt at all. That night, you didn't leave and were patrolling. An idea formed in his heart. He looked at him in disbelief. Was it Fengjiu? Was it because of Fengjiu that the beasts didn't dare to come near you that night? Is that possible? His strength. His voice paused, and he hesitated. That green-robed youth strength was really only in the foundational level? Impossible if he was in the foundational level. How could he protect the Xie siblings? How could he be safe and sound in that dangerous situation? Yes, it was because of Fengjiu. Unfortunately, at that time, none of us knew. He sighed and said, "Not only did we not know that he was the one who protected us from the attacks of the ferocious beasts, our Gua clan's disciples even insulted him because we were injured while he was uninjured. In the end, we even told him to scram." Patriarch Gua was stunned and shocked. He didn't know what to say. He just listened as Patriarch Gua recounted everything that had happened. In the end, Patriarch Gua could only shake his head and sigh, "You guys, if he hadn't come back to save us in the end, I'm afraid we wouldn't have made it back alive." Guaxining said. Hearing this, Patriarch Gua glanced at him and said in a deep voice, "That's because you guys only spoke contemptuously and did not take him seriously. If you wanted to kill him, I reckon that he would have killed you even before the beast attacked." As someone who had been in a high position for a long time, he could more or less guess the other party's thoughts. Even if it were him, if they had the intention to kill, he would not have shown any mercy. At that time, Great Elder's life was hanging by a thread. I promised him that as long as he saved Great Elder's life, I would give him something to thank him when I returned to the clan. It's just that. He looked at his father. I don't know what to give him. Since that's the case, I'll make the necessary arrangements. Patriarch will pause for a moment before continuing. Since he said that he doesn't want to show off, let's keep a low profile tonight. Don't be too noisy. Father, I don't think you will attend the banquet. Guaxining said. Not participating? Yes, and they won't stay in our residence for long. They should be in a hurry to go back. Chapter 2682. Okay, I see. Guaxining nodded and sent his father away. After looking at the sky, he went to his room to rest for a while and planned to go there later. As the sky was getting dark, the lights in Gua's mansion were lit up, illuminating the whole mansion. Guaxining came to the courtyard where Fengjiu and others were resting. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he didn't see anyone. He only saw the shrunken silver wolf sitting at the door. Seeing him coming, the wolf glanced at him sharply. Fengjiu. He stopped and called, but he didn't go inside. Fengjiu. Hearing no response, he called again. At this time, the doors of the two rooms next to him opened, and the siblings of the Xie family came out, rubbing their eyes sleepily. Brother Gua? What's the matter? Shai Yutong asked with a yawn, rubbing his eyes and walking towards him. Xie Shursi also walked over and called out to the maidservant standing guard outside the courtyard. Serve us tea. It would be best if you could bring a few fruits as well. After the maidservant responded, she left first. Did you have a good rest? Guaxining looked at them and asked. Not bad. I just woke up not long after I fell asleep. Shai Yutong said and asked, Brother Gua, are you looking for Xiaojiu? He's probably still sleeping. It doesn't matter. I can wait for him here. He sat down at the table and motioned for them to sit down. He said, My father is holding a banquet tonight and invites you to join him. Hearing this, they looked at each other and said, We have to ask Xiaojiu if he wants to go. It doesn't matter. I'll ask him later. He smiled and said, It's rare for you to come to my house. You should stay here for a few more days and let me do my best as a host. Well, Sha Yutong hesitated and said, I inquired about the distance from this city to my house. When I came back, I told Xiao Jiao. He said that we would leave tomorrow. Maybe we can't stay here for a long time. Leave tomorrow? In such a hurry? Guaxining was slightly surprised. Yes, we've been away from home for a few days. Our parents must be worried. Now that we're out, we naturally have to go back as soon as possible. Guaxining nodded. When they were in the forest, they had already told him that they didn't really get lost. Instead, they accidentally entered the teleportation formation and appeared in the forest. It was also because of this that their families didn't know if they were safe. The door creaked open, and a refreshed Fengjiu walked out of the room. What are you talking about? Xiao Jiao, Big Brother, said that they're having a banquet tonight and invited us over, Guo Yutong said. No, we'll go out for a walk tonight and then come back early to rest so that we can set off tomorrow. Fengjiu said and sat down at the table. At this time, the maidservant outside served tea and fruits before respectfully leaving. Seeing this, Guaxining said, I've already told my father about this matter. As for the Grand Elder's reward, my father will personally prepare it. Well, Fengjiu responded with a little carelessness. I'm familiar with the city. Since you want to go out for a walk, why don't I accompany you? He suggested. Well, Xie Yutong and Xie Yutong looked at Fengjiu. Thank you, Fengjiu said and didn't refuse. Chapter 2683. After chatting for a while, Guaxining led them outside. Before leaving, he told the housekeeper to inform his father and then left the house. Under the night sky, lanterns were hung high in front of the doors. It was a beautiful sight. People came and went on the streets. Some young men and women were playing together, and some children were playing. Both sides of the street were constantly shouting and hawking. It was a lively and bustling scene. Brother, it's so lively here. It's even livelier than where we are. Xie Shirsi happily held her brother's hand and looked around with a smile. Suddenly, she saw some small things in front of her and immediately ran towards them. What is this? She saw a stall with eggs of different colors. She picked one up and looked at it curiously. Young lady, these are pet eggs. Do you like one? The middle-aged man of the stall sized up the girl in front of him. She was dressed well, and he knew that she could afford pet eggs. The smile on his face deepened, and he explained to her enthusiastically. As long as you feed the pet with spirit energy every day, it will break out of its shell after a period of time. These little pets are small and cute. Women like them the most. These are pet eggs? What kind of pet beasts were there? What do they look like? The shells of these eggs are colorful, and the patterns are different. Will the pets inside be the same? These are all low-level pets. They don't have much fighting ability, but they are cute. They are also obedient and will chat with their masters. As for what kind of pets they will be, well, it's hard to say. But one thing is for sure. No matter what kind of pets they will be very cute and lovable. The stall was trying hard to promote. Also, this pet egg is not expensive for young lady. You can buy one and watch it come out. It will be fun. Xie Shirsi was tempted. She couldn't help but ask, how much? We don't take money. We only take crystals. One pet egg is 50 crystals, the stall owner said with a smile. Hearing this, Xie Shirsi couldn't help but turn around. Seeing her brother and Fengjiu walking over, she quickly stepped forward. Brother, I want a pet egg, but I don't have any crystals. Sha Yutong scratched his head and said, I don't have crystal stones either. He looked at Fengjiu and asked, Do you have crystal stones? I'll get Mom and Dad to give it to you when we get back. I have it. I'll pay for it, Guaxining said with a smile. He stepped forward to take out the crystal stones, but was stopped by Sha Yutong. No, how is that possible? As Sha Yutong spoke, he pulled Fengjiu aside and whispered, My sister is interested in him. If she takes the pet eggs he bought, she will be in trouble in the future. You pay for Xiao Shi first. I'll pay you double. Fengjiu couldn't help but laugh. She glanced at him and said, Just one pet egg. She smiled and took out a cosmos sack from her space and handed it to him. Take it. There are a lot of crystals in it. It's enough for you to spend. Hey, thank you. I know you're loyal. Chapter 2684. Seeing this, Washington smiled and did not insist. He just returned to Fengjiu's side. Brother, which one should I choose? Xie looked at the pet eggs placed in front of her and was dazzled for a moment. They all look the same. Just pick one. Sigh. No wonder you have to bring the girls out to slap each other when you go shopping. I can't get anything out of you guys. Xie sighed and thought for a while. Then she looked at Fengjiu and stepped forward with a smile. Xiao Jiu, help me choose. Hearing this, Shai Yutong laughed. Isn't Xiao Jiu a man? Isn't it the same? Xie made a face. Xiao Jiu has good taste. Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled, glanced at those pet eggs, and sighed in his heart. This Xie is really heartless. She doesn't want the silver wolf at the mythological beast level, but she likes these small spiritual pets that have no attack power and belong to the lowest level. It's like giving up a gem to pick a stone. If her parents know about this, they will be angry to death. Xiao Jiu, which one do you think is better? Xie looked at him excitedly, looking forward to his ideas. Fengjiu scanned with his spiritual consciousness and locked his eyes on one of them. He pointed at it and said, This one. Okay, this one. Xie picked it up with a smile and held it in her hand. Haha, miss, come on, this small net bag is for you. You can put the egg in the net bag and hang it around your waist. The stall owner gave her a net bag and gestured to her. Thank you. Xie thanked him with a smile. She played with the fist-sized pet egg and asked, Will it be broken if I accidentally bump into it? No. The pet egg will only break out of the shell from the inside. It can't be broken by external forces, the stall owner said. After they walked away, he took out another egg with a smile and put it in the empty space, then continued to sell it. The silver wolf followed Fengjiu and watched them laughing and chatting in front of it. It couldn't help but despise Xie when she held an egg. How could the pet hatched from such an egg compare with it? Sure enough, except for its master, the other human beings had limited intelligence. Guo Xining gazed at Fengjiu, who stood by his side, and said, There's a pavilion of delicacies in our city. Not only is the environment there elegant, there's plenty of delicacies there as well. Moreover, you can even see the night view of the entire city from there. Why don't we take a seat there? Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at Xie and Xie or continue to shop. Yes. Xie, who was beside him, also nodded. Seeing this, Fengjiu looked at Guo Xining and smiled. Then let's go to the delicacy pavilion. Guo Xining looked at Xie and then at Fengjiu. He was surprised by Fengjiu's attitude towards Xie and Xie. However, he still didn't know what the relationship between Fengjiu and the Xie family was. He only knew that Fengjiu was living in the Xie family. Chapter 2685. Guo Xining ordered a few dishes and some wine. They sat around, but he didn't know what to say for a while. When he first met them in the forest, he felt that the three of them were weak. He helped them as much as he could and got along with them in a way to take care of them. But later, he found that their strength was unfathomable. Now, even though he was an outstanding child of the Guo family, he didn't dare to be arrogant in front of Fengjiu. On the contrary, even if they were peers, it was a little too far, not to mention casually joking with him like the Xie siblings. The scenery here is so good. Xiao Jiu, looking from a high place, don't those lights look like stars? Xie asked with a smile. She leaned on the railing and looked at the night view in the distance excitedly. Well, looking down from a high place, the scenery is not ordinary. Fengjiu nodded slightly and said. Hearing this, Guo Xining's gaze fell on him. He saw that his expression was indifferent, and there was a smile on his ordinary face. Looking at his unremarkable appearance, Guo Xining suddenly had a thought. This might not be his real appearance. How could an unfathomable expert like him have such an ordinary appearance? For a moment, he was lost in thought and stared straight at Fengjiu until he turned to look at him with raised eyebrows. Is there something on my face? Fengjiu asked, picking up the wine glass in front of him and playing with it. I'm just suddenly wondering if this face of yours isn't your original face. Guoxining said this sentence unexpectedly, and then he was slightly stunned and felt a little offensive, so he said sorry. Fengjiu was also stunned, and then he chuckled. He didn't speak, just shook the glass in his hand and took a sip of wine. Xia Yutong, who was next to him, couldn't help but look at Fengjiu's face suspiciously. He stared at it for a long time and said, "This face is so natural. How can it be fake? Moreover, there is no trace of disguise." Then he looked at Guoxining and asked strangely, "Brother Guo, why do you think so?" Listening to Xia Yutong's words, Fengjiu's mouth twitched. This silly boy. If it was easy for him to see through her, would she still be able to survive? Xiao Jiu originally looked like this. Xie Shirsi, who had been lying on the railing, also turned around and said, "When we met him, he looked like this. Although he was not very good looking, he looked good after a long time. When they first met him, he gave them the impression that he was a simple and honest young man. Even after he came to the Xie family, he gave them the impression that he was a man of few words. If they didn't look for him, they might not even see him for a day. However, ever since they fell into the forest, she felt that Fengjiu seemed to have changed into a different person. If he hadn't been with them all the time, she would have suspected that someone had switched him. Otherwise, how could he suddenly become so powerful? Listening to their words, Fengjiu was a little speechless. Didn't she look good? This appearance was incomparable to her original appearance, but it was still delicate and handsome. Compared to the appearances of the young masters of the aristocratic families that they were used to seeing, it was naturally slightly inferior. But no matter what, they wouldn't say that it wasn't good looking, right? Chapter 2686. In fact, you are much better looking than the people on the street. Of course, you are a little inferior to us. Xia Yutong said, but as soon as he said this, he felt that something was wrong. When he was about to say it again, he heard Guoxining next to him couldn't help laughing. Sorry, I can't help it, he still said with a smile. Looking at Fengjiu's helpless face, he finally understood why he cared so much about Xie's brother and sister. The brother and sister did not change because of his strength, and they still got along with each other casually. Perhaps it was this casualness and naturalness that made Fengjiu treat them differently. In fact, I didn't mean that. I mean, how can I say it? He was not good at words and didn't know how to say it. Well, I know what you mean. Don't say it. Let's eat something. The dishes are going to be cold. Fengjiu gestured, lifted the wine pot, and poured himself another glass of wine. Then he saw Xia Yutong's wine glass was pushed over. She looked at him and saw his shy face. I want to drink, too. How about your alcohol tolerance? Can you drink? She remembered that they drank fruit wine at the banquet of the Ruan family, not this wine. Yes, of course I can drink. I am a man, he said with his chest out. Mother said that you can't drink outside. Xie Shirsi said and added, even if you drink, you can only taste it. Don't drink too much. Otherwise, you will get into trouble outside if you get drunk. Fengjiu nodded. Well, that's reasonable. Let's have a drink. Don't drink too much. She poured him a glass and let him taste the wine. Xia Yutong grinned. One glass is okay. Guoxining smiled and put a piece of meat in Fengjiu's bowl. Try it. These are the signature dishes here. They also have some pastries. After eating, you can order some pastries to try. Thank you, Fengjiu said and began to eat. They ate and chatted as they enjoyed the night view. After the meal, several plates of pastries were served. After tasting the pastries, Guoshirsi couldn't help but say, these pastries are delicious. I'll bring some back for father and mother to eat. Guoxining saw that Fengjiu also seemed to like to eat pastries, so he said, since you're leaving tomorrow, I'll go back and tell them to make them for you tomorrow morning. It's fresher and tastes better that way. That's great. Thank you, Brother Guo. Xiaoshi thanked him with a smile. You're welcome. It's just some pastries. He glanced at Fengjiu and said, You still have to hurry on with your journey tomorrow. Don't stay up too late tonight. Go back and rest early. Okay. Fengjiu nodded. Seeing that they were almost done eating, he prepared to leave. Guaxining let them go first while he went to pay the bill and ordered some pastries. Xiaoshi, who went downstairs first, was hit by a man who smelled of alcohol when she went downstairs. Her figure swayed and she fell downstairs. Ah! She exclaimed and lost her balance. Sister! Xia Yutong reached out to pull her, but failed. Fortunately, Fengjiu next to him reached out and pulled her quickly, so she didn't fall down the stairs. Oh, I was scared to death. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.